Hello and welcome back to ID Boxing for our live review show. Joined by... Oh, there we go. We are actually fully live now. Joined by none other than Barry Jones and Andy Clarke. Barry, why are you shaking your head?
You're just so unprofessional. It's just ridiculous. Like, I don't know.
This is the level that you've fallen to now. You have to work with us. Like the serious people don't want to work with you anymore, Barry. You have to work with the amateurs.
Well, I would beg to differ, mate. I'm busy at the minute. I was on Channel 5 the other day. I know I didn't promote myself last time I was on it, did I? So I went, I'm doing a bit of work. I'm on DAZN this week with Josh Warrington.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, you're not on telly like Andy Clarke.
I was on Channel 5. What are you on about? I'm on terrestrial TV. He's part-time. You haven't got that job yet on Sky. It's not a guarantee that he's going to have that job. There's plenty of adequate commentators like him.
We thought we were due to get going live at 6 p.m, but we decided to do 10 minutes or so early for Barry Jones's personal job advertisement. But Andy, how are you? Television's Andy Clarke has graced us with his presence. Obviously, no TV work today, but he's very busy with it on the other days. How are you, Andy?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Busy?
Well, I was working for radio at the weekend for Talk Sport at the Fury-Chisora fight. But yeah, all is well. All is well. Hoping I might get over to Belfast for Conland at the weekend. And then we're kind of done. I'll be in Bournemouth on the 17th, but because previous years we've always seemed to have had a show like right up tight against Christmas on the 22nd or the 23rd, but we kind of run out of track, haven't we, this year? So the 17th that weekend's the last one, which is a bit of a shame because I do enjoy a fight right up before Christmas because you can recycle all those,
Because you've got no friends and you've got
the fight before Christmas, violent fight, seasons beating.
I
love all of that. I love all of that. I love it.
Yeah, well, I'm actually in the opposite camp where I'm really glad.
Whoa, no one's asked you.
On December the 7th.
No one's asked you. What are you going on about yourself for? You're the interviewer.
I'm actually the host. The host with the most.
Mr. Jones is in quite an unpredictable mood today.
He's always
which is awesome, which is brilliant.
The only thing
anything can happen here.
No one's asked you. This is why you can't get a job above this. This is why. You know what I mean? You got all the looks and everything. You always dress smart, but your manner is crap.
Listen, I am television's loss. Unlike you who have lost television. But anyway.
What is TV these days anymore?
That's a good question. It's a good question. Let's ask DAZN's Barry Jones about what
Channel
TV...
Channel 5's Barry Jones now, until next week. And then after that, then I'll be Radio 5's Channel Barry Jones. And then after that, I'll be some stream from Dubai.
Some stream from Dubai.
I don't know where it goes. Core Sports.
Right, before we actually start getting onto some boxing talk instead of talking about Barry Jones' employment status, if anybody has any questions in the chat before we get going, obviously we're going to cover what was a packed weekend of boxing both in the UK and abroad. But before we do that, if anybody has any questions, Base the Kid says shout out Rob, Barry and Andy. Shout out Base the Kid. Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes or so to wind down, I guess, before we get started. I think the last time we did a live show, it was me, you and Deck, wasn't it?
Is it boiling hot in the other place?
It was boiling hot and it was late. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
That was horrendous.
You had some technical issues, didn't you?
Yeah.
Again. Unprofessional. Unbelievable.
We won't get that on Channel 5.
You don't. The thing is, what I would say, right? Well, you lot, your industry, right? The YouTubing thing. There's no editorial in your business.
Not at the minute, no.
That's all. I don't know what I'm talking about. I heard someone else say, I said, that sounds good. I'll use that. I don't know what editorial means, but yeah. You don't have it though. Whatever it means, you don't have it.
Not a question, but a comment to say I fell asleep during the Fury-Chisora fight because it was so bad.
Yeah, you missed all the good bits.
If you had a good sleep and woke up in time for Chocolatito, I think you're probably winning in that regard. We're just waiting for everybody to show up, to turn up. We're almost 50 watching now, which is more viewers than you get on DAZN. But anyway, moving forward.
Dear me.
Hello, Eddie. I'll see you in Leeds. But anyway,
he's offering up there, do you? No.
Oh dear.
See you in Leeds. That means like a fight. That did I see you?
Are you doing Leeds? Are you going to Leeds this week?
What's he going to Leeds for?
No,
I don't know. I'm just asking him. He's a busy man. He always pops up in places where you don't expect.
I think
him.
hopefully.
Chill, don't he? Whatever.
Yeah, of course. I think I might be going to Belfast for Michael Conlon. Jamie asked me a few weeks ago, and I think I just need him to confirm it the next 2 or 3 days. Because the problem with those ones is that it's always possible that ESPN might decide late on that they're going to do it themselves, basically.
Yeah, but they'll still need something for their little thing. Sorry, because the last time, I think they asked me to do the last one. I was working, so they had Tommy McCarthy. No, they did, seriously.
Of course they did.
Oh,
He said he was working. What are the chances of that?
Yeah, but they're not.
Tommy McCarthy did it with somebody else.
Yeah, but they're not gonna. I think that's might have been for the rest of the undercard before the.
Okay, fair enough. But I think they were happy with it. I think it was funny because Tommy's funny, isn't he? He's a stand-up comedian, Tommy McCarthy.
Is he?
Yeah, did you not know that?
No,
I mean, I think literally he might have done a comedy club recently. No, proper one.
Right. Okay. Wow.
You know this because he knows everything. Apparently,
That takes some balls.
he knows everything except like real boxing. He knows all the.
That's why I surround myself with the experts and you. So you have the real the television broadcast analysts like Andy Clarke, and then whoever else that you can find for cheap.
Glad I came.
Wait, by the way, he's leaving early today.
We should have done this little bit here when I was about to leave, because I would have just got.
No, what we do is we're killing as much time as possible before you leave, and then we can start having a rational
should
chat.
mention killing when talking about boxing, mate.
Right, we've got 2 minutes or so
As
of
Kevin
rambling.
Lerena said to Daniel Dubois.
He did say that. We're going to come on to that fight pretty soon. I think that's going to take up quite a little bit of time. We've got about 2 minutes or so before we're going to get started into some real boxing chat, as Barry Jones likes to call it. So any questions, anybody in the chat who wants to talk about... Barry nearly sent me to sleep on Friday with his commentary. Well done, Kay.
That's very unfair. I thought you were very good on Friday. You and George and Dave Farrer. A three-hander.
You had a prick. Who was it?
His name is Kay.
A three-hander's not an easy thing to combine.
If you're not big, Kay, if you're not, let's have it. If you're big, if you're young and you're big, I don't want to fight you. If you're old and small, I'll batter you. I'll beat you on points.
Right, let's get going.
The worst thing is, mate, you woke up. Whose phone's that? That might be mine, actually.
That's not mine.
Can you get it?
I'm a professional.
Can you get
It's
it?
not mine. Barry tells me off when my phone goes off during the thing because he's jealous that people want to contact me. But anyway, let's start on the Friday then. Barry, you were there, of course, giving your expert opinion on Josh Kelly versus Troy Williamson.
That was George Groves did doing that. I was just sat next to him, on him. I told people I was sat in his lap. Yeah.
Yes, Josh Kelly, brilliant performance against Troy Williamson.
It was a really good one-sided fight, if that makes any sense. Usually one-sided fights, which we had on Saturday, are not always great to watch because it's one-sided. But this was entertaining because Troy didn't stop trying, to his credit. Though you'll look back and think I was a little bit one-dimensional in my approach. But Josh Kelly was probably the best I've seen him, I think, and he needed to be. There's a lot of questions. I think with Josh Kelly, he got a lot of things on his back because he got a business outside of boxing where he probably doesn't need to box. He has a big social media following. He's a good-looking kid. All these things that can distract you from your sport, and he had that Avanesyan defeat hanging over him still. No, this was the test that a lot of people thought he was going to get stopped. Troy Williamson showing how tough he is, and I was going to be that Kelly starts fast, but Williamson can walk him down and beat him up and stop him, and then burst the bubble, but he couldn't. And I thought he was not quite punch perfect. Though I did say that in commentary, but he was brilliant in the movement, constantly changing direction. Shot selection was good. Patience in his work, never panicked when Williamson got a little bit close, and he could see everything. He was like, I dare say this, he was a couple of moves ahead always. He really was, and Williamson just couldn't. He had the will and the mindset to want to push forward, but just didn't have the intelligence to set any traps or cut the ring off or use a double jab, which I kept mentioning. Would have closed the gap for him, but yeah, the change direction with the feet just threw him. He was brilliant, Kelly. I think that was his best performance when he needed it the most. And now all of a sudden, you're going, oh, maybe he will fill his potential. Because it didn't seem that way, did it? Something I do think that he lacks power. And that might always be a trouble, says me. But it's hard enough at my weight, at featherweight, super feather, when you have no power to make an effect at a higher level. But the higher you go up in weights, the more that is a bigger factor. Because they're just bigger men who will just literally walk through you. So that's the worry. The only thing I would say that it's not get carried away with Josh Kelly just yet because of that. But he did 12 rounds. He dictated the pace off the back foot, which is very hard to do. That's my stomach, sorry. And but he'd still, he boxed. It was a decent pace. He did it comfortably, and yeah, it was an A+ for me.
Andy, impressed with Pretty Boy Kelly, PBK?
Yeah, I was, and I was just really, I was really pleased for him as well because Troy Williamson is a really good British champion, good fighter. As Barry said, he stuck to the game plan. He kept believing, he kept working. He would have had every reason to believe that Kelly would have slowed down in the second half, and it didn't happen. And I know that it took a lot for him to get past that Avanesyan fight, and the reason being that they knew that there was a problem, but it wasn't to do with the weight or anything like that, although he has moved up and he looks better for it. It was a mental block that he developed around fight nights, whereby he would work himself into a state of such kind of anxiety that it's like you've sprung a leak in your gas tank, and as soon as the bell goes, that petrol just floods out really quickly, and you just can't do 12 rounds in that state of kind of nervous hypertension. That's basically where he was, and that happens to lots of fighters. You see loads of fighters, don't you, who you'll have seen loads who are amazing in the gym and can't do it on the night.
Well, that's what we talk about, like the Golovkins and the Canelos and even the Kovalevs, the big punch. They put you under pressure with your front foot. And I always say about regulating your breathing, and that's the thing. So, you have, because almost when you throw a punch or especially when you throw combinations, you almost go, but you have to do it yourself. So when you're dictating the pace, you know when to go. So you're ready to take that big gulp of breath and to exhale. But when you have to do it reactively, you have to be fitter in many ways to be a reactive fighter, because you have to, you're always having to work off what they do. So to get used to the breathing is always a struggle. But if you're struggling with that, if you panic inside, if you're already panicking before anything's happening to you. But I'd say with Williamson, he tried to put the pressure on, but it wasn't intense enough to make Kelly panic at all. He just couldn't. It wasn't an intimidating thing.
But I think previously it could have been.
No, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think previously it could have been.
But we thought it was going to be this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he's managed to. He did some work. He's done quite a lot of work with a psychologist and that kind of thing, and they got to the bottom of it. It took quite a lot of working through, but that block, that leak has been plugged now, and so the possibilities are there in a way that they weren't before, and it had to happen. If it hadn't happened, then he was going nowhere, quite honestly, because as Barry said, he's a respectable puncher but not a big puncher, so he's generally speaking, more often than not, particularly the higher he goes, is going to have to go the distance. And if you're in a position where you can't go the distance, then you're not going to win, are you?
So when you're fighting bigger, more.
It was a massive fight for him, Pete. It's not to be underestimated. It was in the context of his career. It was either you're starting the second chapter or you're done. Really.
Well, you found if you didn't. Williamson's a good fighter, by the way.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem that on Saturday, but he won for a Friday, but he won for the one to try in. But that would have been his ceiling, or that would have been a ceiling too far. And then you're thinking, am I going to get work? No. And by the way, Channel 5 and Wasserman, and they're banking on him being there to push on to do more boxing. He's going to be their flagship fighter. So it's a lot of weight on your shoulders. And also, again, that defeat from David Avanesyan was one that he had to, that demon that he had to get rid of. And I think he did. And
he just looked so kind of liberated, I thought. It was like watching someone who was really enjoying himself. He didn't seem to have any kind of concerns about his own stamina. He didn't really take any rounds off or look to conserve any energy. And at the end there, I love the celebrations at the end, because everybody loves winning that British title. But for someone who's always talked, well, not him actually, but for people around boxing have talked about him being this, that and the other, and a potential world champion right from the very beginning. I did think, and I remember I did actually say it at the time, that the big up that a lot of the Rio Olympians got was a bit ridiculous, to be honest, just unrealistic and not helpful. And I think he was in that category. There was loads of pressure on him, and he just looked like a weight had come off his shoulders on Friday, and it was great to see.
I think one of the most impressive parts of the performance was for me, it's something that you always talk about early in the fight, in the first round, showing your opponent what you can do and what you've got. Stuck it on Troy Williamson a little bit. He caught him with some big shots in the first round. In the first round of the fights. You mentioned there about Troy Williamson putting the pressure on, but I think he got buzzed again in the third round by a right hand. And I think Kelly did that really, really well. And particularly when you've got a history of, certainly in the David Avanesyan fight, and the talk is always around how does how does Kelly look after 4 or 5 rounds? He kind of bought himself a little bit more time than he would have usually had by hurting Williamson and letting him know, you can't just walk in on me. You're not going to walk in on me, keep your hands up and grind me down and then take me out in the second half of the fight. He put an impression on him in the first round. He hurt him again in the third round. And I feel like that's why he was able to dictate to the point that he did, certainly in the second half of the fight. It was kind of the perfect fight for him, whereas against somebody who's going to come and test what we've all kind of grown quite undecided about with regards to his gas tank and his metal or whatever you want to call it.
That's it.
And it was the perfect performance for the perfect stage of his career, I felt.
Yeah.
Totally.
Can't argue with that, mate.
No, nor me. People have been questioning his minerals.
He wrote that down last week.
Well, you memorised it then.
Yeah. That's what it is,
you're right. It was the perfect fight for him, and it was make or break. And whilst they were very confident that he would make it, on the outside, when you're not in that kind of inner sanctum, you can't share that confidence because you don't really know. And I wasn't sure. I was. I go down to that gym relatively often, but you know that the people around a fighter are always going to. They're not going to tell you he can't do it, are they?
That's what I always find out when people interview like the promoter or the trainer, the fighter. What are they going to say? They're going to say the trainer's always going to know he's in the best shape of his life. No, he's really good. He's confident. There's no point in asking him. You're not going to get no real answers, are you? They're not going to go, listen, we're up against it. I
think in what you've said there, Andy, but everyone can believe, but until you do it, I mean, it's terrestrial TV. You've got the big hitters like Barry Jones ringside watching. Until you're in that pressure cooker environment, where, as you've mentioned, it was kind of, if he loses that fight, where does he go? Decent opponent in front of him, good, proper British champion. Until you go through that and what he could potentially grow from the performance on Friday is what I'm most interested to see. But you don't know until he does it. He's done it now, performed well, he's got the belt, and he can move on with his career. Because I think...
Yeah, that's it. Boxing's mad, isn't it? Because you look at other sports and there are very obvious metrics in other individual sports. If you do track, you need to run the times or people won't take you seriously. You can't say, I can run 9.8. Well, go on then. No, I'm not going to do it. And I ran 10.7 last night, admittedly, but they weren't my spikes. It was a bit windy, but I can definitely do 9.8. And then just carry on and carry yourself and behave like that's who you are and that's where you are. But in boxing, you can do that.
Yeah.
But then at some point, you've got to run the times, for want of a better phrase. And that was what Friday was about. And he did it.
But I still think matching him is still, again, you can't go too carried away.
Who I was all of a sudden
go,
next,
look what he did, and then go, right, let's go, let's push for Charlo. No, let's go, let's get Castaneo or whatever his name is. I still think it's okay. Just get him another British defence. Get him to defend his British title. Sorry, for the first defence. Get him to defend his title now a few times and build him up on Channel 5. I don't know who, but I mean that I wouldn't even venture the European level just yet. Which people just skip over, by the way, and I don't think that's a good idea because it gives you that grounding to fight for, to get the experience and the level to go towards world level. But he showed his promise in a fight where people didn't fancy him to win, and that's the difference. All the other fights, everyone thought he was going to be the one to win all of them, and this was the one that no one thought he was going to win. Most people didn't.
I agree. They do need to be quite careful and not be in any particular rush because he's had time to recover from one fairly major setback. He might not have time to recover from another one. You don't want to be too quick because he's not old, but at the same time, they need to get this right. But there's every chance that they will, given the people that he's got around him. There's very experienced people around him. What about Eggington? Is that a decent fight for him?
Potentially.
For Channel 5, that's a good fight.
Where's he boxing now weight-wise? He was at 160 and he
I think he could probably still do it.
I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could.
The money was there.
That'd be decent. And then maybe I was thinking a couple of fights down the line, somebody like Sergio Garcia. Somebody like that. That's another come forward fight. He's going to test that second half of the fight.
If you could beat him, then
and then you're ready. But I don't think there's any. I agree. I don't think there's any need to go straight into that next. But somebody like
the confidence that the kids got, and the confidence the corner had. I think Adam Brook, I'm not one for praising trainers too much, but he's brilliant in the corner. And then round 10, he just went, "Hold your feet a bit now." And I remember I was thinking they're going to go for the stoppage here. But I think he just thought, you've done him now. You've spanned the kid on his head literally, and he don't know where he is. He just can't find you. So just
The corner was really interesting, actually. The
all of a
way he
sudden
stayed on
just
his feet, stayed on his feet in between rounds.
It was
Every round.
show to everybody.
Went for a little walk around a lot of the time.
That might be maybe like, you know, like... I know,
maybe that's better for him.
I know, because like, we're creatures of habit, don't we? Everyone. But certainly boxers, you know, familiarity and all the rest of it, you like that. So... Like in the gym, you never sit down in the corner when you spar.
No,
you never do, but you know you need the rest in a big fight because it can be exhausting. But maybe that might be the risk thing. All the things it was like maybe going back to the corner, having to sit down, and you know, it all being a bit too intense and real, and you maybe be constantly moving.
Yeah.
Like I would say before a fight, like I'd never been in the dressing room. They had to come and find me. And my world title fight, like not like half over, I'm gloved up, and I'm in the crowd talking to my mates, and my dad's going, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, come on, let's go."
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, because that just made me feel comfortable.
But we that's a really good
Maybe
point.
he needs to. I know. Look how comfortable he was.
And maybe that's it. He's the kind of character whereby you really do have to try and make it feel like it's just another night or just another day in the gym, another day in your working life.
Yeah.
With other people, you do need the extra pressure and everything works for them. But
They should interview him in between rounds. Do you know what? He would have done. He's brilliant, isn't it? He would have done that as well.
Probably would have done.
That's all. They were buzzing full of confidence in a fight where really, if he makes a mistake, he gets hurt.
It was the perfect type of fight for him. Even if he goes in there and he looks spectacular and he bombs Williamson out in 2 or 3 rounds, yeah, brilliant, looks great. But you're still thinking in the back of your mind, can he do the rounds? Can he do 7, 8, 9, 10 in a hard fight? So yeah, good performance there from Josh Kelly. 1 or 2 shouts in here about Eggington. Yeah, quite like that fight. Sam Eggington. I think so. John Pegg once pulled me to one side in the gym and said to me that Sam Eggington has beaten more unbeaten fighters than James Toney, which I thought was a wonderful stat. But anyway, moving on to the heavyweights and Saturday night at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Andy, going to come to you first. I know you were there working, unlike Barry, but let's start with the main event and work our way down. Tyson Fury.
Hang on a minute. Were you working? Were you there working?
I was there.
Did they sit you like miles away?
Oh yeah.
Oh, there you go. Shut up then.
Yeah, it was about, I was almost,
I was at home and I was still probably closer than you. So there you go then. And I was warm.
Yeah, it was really cold. But anyway, Andy, we sat here a week or so ago and we discussed the merits of Derek Chisora challenging Tyson Fury for the WBC and lineal heavyweight titles. I think we were all in agreement of the fact the fight was not going to be the most competitive, and I don't think it was on Saturday night.
No, it wasn't. It turned out, for a combination of reasons, it turned out to be what I feared, really. I wasn't surprised that it was one-sided, and I think the fact that it was so one-sided, we do need to give Fury some credit for that, because nobody else has done that with Chisora, and the gap between them was just so big, bigger than I thought it would be. To be honest, he couldn't do a single thing with Tyson Fury, who could do whatever he wanted. And I was on the way here just tracing back in my head what I said at what points of the fight, because I was commentating for TalkSport, and so you're not able to consult anything else. You're just processing your own thoughts and what you're thinking at the time, and you don't know what other people around you are saying. But I remember second and third round thinking Fury could close the show early here if he wants to, and then he kind of stepped off a little bit. And at the time I thought maybe he's just being totally safe here. He doesn't want to take any kind of a risk. In retrospect, at that point, he started to carry him. That's really what happened. After 5 rounds, that was the point at which I first floated the question to Spencer Oliver, who I was working with, at what point do the corner need to start thinking about this? I wasn't suggesting that they should stop it after 5 rounds, because nobody's going to do that in the world title fight. It's not just about fighter welfare. You've got to give them the best possible chance to win, even though there was no way he could win, but you've also got to give them their pride. There are conflicts at play there, because if everything was just about fighter safety, then let's all just not box. Yeah. That would be the safest thing, wouldn't it? But once we got to 7 rounds, from that point onwards, we were just saying they have to stop this fight. And my rationale for that was that you're 7-0 down, so at that point you need knockdowns. Nothing had happened that gave the merest suggestion that that was possible. Therefore, he can't win. So stop the fight. I thought that was pretty simple for me at that stage. Stop the fight. No one would have complained, because within the arena, within the stadium, I think the first 3 rounds, people were kind of excited about the fact that maybe Fury would win by stoppage. Then 4, 5, 6, maybe. This is how it kind of felt to me. I don't know whether I'm kind of making it up with the benefit of hindsight. But 4, 5, 6, it kind of felt like people were thinking, oh, but look at Chisora, he's digging in, he's look at the courage of the man, and they were quite kind of high on that. But then after halfway, it was just you're watching it through your fingers. I couldn't believe that they let him out for the 10th round, Don Charles in the corner. I thought they really let him down, actually. I thought he was poor. And Victor Loughlin, I think, thought the same. And he stopped it as soon as he could into the 10th round. And it's not the easiest job in the world in the corner. And I understand that. But it was a fight where I looked at it and I just thought, nobody can tell me that was okay to let that go on as long as it did. Nobody.
Barry?
Yeah. I'm still waiting for remember the first round was going to be the best round in boxing history? Never happened. What I would say, right, is it was what we expected. Like I said last week, we've seen this fight before, and maybe that was turned out to be sort of true. So it is what it is. Like, we knew what we were getting, and we got exactly what we knew. Let's be honest. But people went out to see it. So, just because I had no interest in it, just because I didn't think it was going to be a competitive fight, and most people didn't do it within boxing, but the people who paid to go through in the gate, and I bet you the pay-per-view probably did okay as well. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case. It just shows the power of Tyson Fury, that his marketability. That they can sell you anything as long as his name's attached to it, and that has to be it. So I can't. It's amazing, like that he can. If he sold 60,000 people to come and watch him, beat the guy who he beats, so comfortable, especially the last fight before, and it was always going to be the case, and he still came out in a freezing cold outdoor arena, outdoor stadium, just shows the power of the man. I can't blame anyone. I mean, I hate it. But you can't blame anyone for it. You can't blame the fighters for taking the money. Why wouldn't you? You can't blame the promoter because people clearly bought it. Now, if nobody bought it, if everyone just just said, no, I'm not buying it, they're not buying the pay-per-view, I'm not buying a ticket for that, then there you go. You gotta go. It just shows that if you don't show a competitive fight, people won't watch it. But it hasn't shown that. It's shown people just want to go to big occasions. People just want to be around Tyson Fury. People just want to see him and say, I was there when he battered his mate. And that's what it is.
Yeah, and if they'd stopped it sooner, I would have regarded it overall as having been a successful night all around. When you look at what the vested interests in it need from it, I would have said okay.
But it was a successful. It was successful.
It depends.
For me, it wasn't. Because
it wasn't successful for me because the fight has no merit. But let's be honest, before it started, it wasn't successful. But I mean, it was successful because people went to watch it and they paid for it.
But
everyone attached to it.
We sat here a week ago and we discussed the merits of pay-per-view and how, in my opinion, and I think we all kind of agreed to varying different degrees, where we're getting to a point now where there's only so many more of these you can flog. And we've got fights that a lot of people don't think are pay-per-view that are behind paywalls and a pay-per-view, and the fights that we want to see happen aren't happening. My answer to what you said there, and I agree, it's the Tyson Fury show. It's people are paying to see Tyson Fury. Then why did he need to fight somebody that he's already beaten twice? He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights in Derek Chisora. If it's the Tyson Fury show, point. Why does he need to fight somebody? Look,
okay. I think it shows more as the Tyson Fury so that he can just fight anybody. I'm not happy with it. I don't.
No. But then it doesn't need to be Derek Chisora. That fight went how it was always going to go. And one of the things, I didn't enjoy the fight. I didn't enjoy the build up to the fight because I felt like, for me, in my position of covering the sport, I had 2 choices there last week. Either go there and try and, in my opinion, flog a dead horse in the fight in Fury-Chisora, or go there and argue with everybody who is telling you why it's a worthwhile fight and a worthwhile occasion, which it clearly wasn't. It clearly wasn't. And the fight was the worst version of what it was going to be, in my opinion, where you've got Chisora for half a round came and gave it a go, and then was dissected surgically by the best heavyweight in the world, who has only got better since the last time they boxed. And Chisora...
the gulf between them now is bigger than it's ever been.
It was enormous. I did an exclusive preview for Bet365, go and check that out on their news website, where I said that it was... Okay, Chisora's kind of in recent years become more of a cult figure and more of an attraction, I suppose.
Someone called him a boxing legend, British boxing legend the other day.
But the ability, the level of the ability... Look, when Fury boxed Otto Wallin, in Vegas, I was one of the few who said, look, Ali didn't fight Joe Frazier every time out. He didn't fight George Foreman every time out. There was a Chuck Wepner along the way, and there was these fights who were not up to standard.
And he wasn't champion of the world either at the time.
But he didn't fight somebody after filling them in twice and has lost 3 of his last 4 fights. And the only fight that he did win was a very close decision to Kubrat Pulev, who may be a top 15, top 20 heavyweight. One of the big I had many problems, but one of the big problems I had was people before the fight saying, oh, well, you know, it's Del Boy and he's been a great servant to British boxing. And look, all true. Okay, brilliant. But then you've got the same people after the fight talking about, oh, well, that's the last time, you know, Derek should retire. Oh, stop the fight. Where's the towel? The referee. You can't have it both ways. And there are people who know better. So when Derek Chisora is getting filled in for 8-9 rounds and he has absolutely no hope, all of the people who before the fight who were trying to sort of justify it and make out like it's somewhat acceptable, oh, will he beat Pulev, he did this, he did that, you don't get to then go, oh, this is terrible, Don Charles, why are you not, because you're complicit. I feel like Saturday was, look, okay, great, there was a lot of people in there, by all accounts it looked great on the telly, it was a good atmosphere, it was a good spectacle, boxing needs spectacles, but the fight itself was a complete dud. Nobody could have watched that and thought it was anything remotely resembling a competitive sporting encounter. And that's not good for the sport. Okay, you get 60,000 people through the turnstiles in December for a stadium fight. Okay, brilliant. But how many more of them do you get? How many people went away from there thinking, oh, that was great?
I bet you more. Because
I'm sure a portion of them. But
they sell that to people who, because people will go away thinking that Tyson Fury is just the best fighter that's ever walked the planet. That's what they'll think. He's a super talent. I'm a big fan of his. I really am. I think he's brilliant, and I love watching him. But you know, that fight, winning that fight as easy as he did, doesn't make him any better than he was before that fight. You know, that was never a test for him. It was just how he wants. Like I said, he wants to win. He'll win when he decides he wants to win, and that's not even a slight at Derek Chisora. It's just he's not as good as him. You can't. Not even going to be as good as someone else. You're as good as you. And Derek Chisora's not a great servant to British box. He's a great servant to himself. Derek Chisora, like I'm not a huge fan of his, but he says this is how it is. I'm in it for the money. That's it. I just give me the money and I'll fight anyone, and that's great. But he don't do it. He doesn't do it. He don't care about the integrity of the sport, and why should he? And I think we're at a point now where there is no integrity in the sport. It's clearly gone. There are a few fighters. There was 2 who boxed, a few hours later over in Phoenix, but really it's not. So it was a success, and the promoter will see that and go, we got in a freezing cold December in a fight that was always one-sided. We sold that, and people bought it. So we know what we can do.
Yeah, we can do it again, and we can pull the wool over the eyes. And
again,
that's like, fair play to them, and
any other promoter would,
but that's not good.
And
for
any
the
other
long-term
promoter would do the
sport.
same. Any other TV company, so I don't slag off BT Sport because they might have me back.
They won't have me back.
Dev might have me back, Dev. And but I mean, and Sky would have done the same, and so would DAZN do the same, and so Channel 5 wouldn't do. But I mean, they would, and you can't blame them. It's all about making money. But as a boxing fan, just pure boxing, I don't care who earns money, I don't care how much they earn, I don't care about TV companies, how much they get, unless they want to use me. But then I had no interest in the fight, and I've said that from day one. But they don't give a shit about us because we're in.
Yeah, I get that, but joint record high pay-per-view.
I gotta say, I bet you more people walked away from there thinking, "Wow, that was a good night," because it's all bells and whistles. And Tyson Fury's brilliant, and all they remember is him shouting on the microphone and singing and waving at people because he's so charismatic and he's brilliant, isn't he? You know, he's what you want in a heavyweight world champion. And the selling. No, they were selling the next fight pretty much before the final bell went. You know what I mean?
Next 2 fights.
Yeah. So exactly. So yeah. So there you go. You got.
No, I mean
that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I'm not a lover of that, but that's how it works.
From a marketing point of view and a business point of view, it definitely was a success. But I just walked away from it thinking, okay, that went how we thought it would go, but as a kind of, not a purist isn't really the right word, but just looking at what actually happened in the ring. If they'd stopped it after 7, I'd have been all right with it.
Yeah.
But as it was, I wasn't all right with it because he took an absolute hiding there for 6 minutes. that he just didn't need to take.
He
And
was
there was
hurt.
utterly no point to it.
He was hurt
whatsoever.
badly in the third round of the fight. I think if Fury went, you mentioned earlier about feeling that he carried him.
He definitely did.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like the fight could have been over in the third or fourth round if Fury was so.
And he probably would have done him a greater kindness if he had just knocked him out, because that kind of sustained head trauma for 9 or 10 rounds is worse for you than
Good old Derek Chisora.
getting knocked out.
But again, it's certainly no slight on Tyson Fury and no slight on Derek Chisora, because of course what's Chisora going to go? Nah, Tyson, I don't want a couple of million quid. I don't want to fight at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, no one's going to be up for that. He's going to say, where do I sign? And Fury, but I mean, Derek said, he came out and said, look, the only person who wanted this fight was Tyson Fury. He said Frank Warren didn't want it, Bob Arum didn't want it, BT didn't want it. The only reason why this fight is happening is because Tyson said, this is the fight, take it or leave it.
Yeah, and I'm sure Top Rank and ESPN walked away from it thinking it was a magnificent success, because they've had Fury out twice in the UK this year. They've done 154,000 tickets
And it looked great.
after building that brand in the USA, and they did that really well. Then the Wilder 2 and 3, and now 2 stadium fights. You know, the world is.
By the way, surrounded by
his oyster, really.
Surrounded by the World Cup. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a hard sell to go out in the cold.
And they'll make. I'm very confident that fight with Usyk is going to be announced soon, because you look at the people around that table: Queensbury, Top Rank, and K2. They've done so much business between them over the years.
On the undercard as well.
Yeah, of course. So they were all in town all week. You know Alex well, and they'll get that done, because it just makes far too much sense.
And it pleases everybody.
Yeah, everyone wins.
Yeah.
Go to Saudi Arabia, make an absolute
to-
fortune.
yeah.
You know, it's.
Yeah, you would think it.
I'm
you
as
would think it
confident
does
as I've
happen.
ever been about an undisputed fight at heavyweight with that one.
It's not. So I had this
Definitely
conversation
won't happen,
with somebody when they said, "Oh, it's 100% going to happen." I went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Nothing's ever happened.
whoa, 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 whoa!" There's no such thing as
But
100%.
you just can't see any obstacles that would make any sense.
I mean,
for
Fury.
it not to
I
happen.
missed it, obviously.
you
Well,
mentioned
did
you
Fury,
mentioned sense in the context of boxing.
Did Fury?
Did you realise?
yeah.
Crazy.
Because there wasn't anyone else available? People would have moaned even more if he fought someone lower in the rankings than Chisora. Listen, mate, Chisora was conveniently, shout out Mauricio Sullivan, number 14 in the WBC rankings after beating somebody who wasn't anywhere near the top 15 in Kubrat Pulev.
I hate things like that happening.
Jan Kosobutsky.
That's how I got my world titles.
there was plentiful, you know, from a sporting contest.
Yeah,
and again, if you're going for the Tyson Fury show, which I agree,
Yeah.
and like, as I say, the Wallin fight, which he got absolutely crucified for before the fight, taking it because it wasn't this, it wasn't that. I was one of the few who said, you know, it's not going to be a Wilder or somebody every single time, and I actually felt like Wallin was a decent operator, and you know, people didn't necessarily know that. But like, if it is the Tyson Fury show, then why can he not box somebody who's going to be a more competitive sporting opponent?
Because
What did Chisora do to sell the
Yeah.
fight? Did you see
Well,
the
they
press
probably,
conference?
the thing
they
is, though,
probably
they
just
didn't-
don't want to take that risk, do
That's
they?
exactly.
They
didn't
know
want to
that
take, they didn't want to take a
Chisora.
silly risk. They knew it would sell anyway. And Chisora is a name in the UK. So even though they're selling on Tyson can sell a fight on his own, Chisora was the safety blanket, was the safety parachute, just in case he can't sell on his own. Chisora can step up and do something silly.
On
He didn't
a
have to
flat fee, he wasn't selling anything.
No, what I mean is, though, but I mean, boxing people. No, I mean not boxing. Generic sports fans who might have seen him on other platforms before will go, well, there's this narrative that Chisora always comes and gives it a go, and he sort of does most of the time, and you know, and yeah, but it was never because we've seen the fight before, and it was never going to be a competitive fight.
So Joe says it was an okay fight on paper. It wasn't. Zhang is also 40. You're talking about Zhang Gillet. I'm talking about Jan Kosobutsky. But anyway, get on BoxRec, Joe. But anyway, moving on, we're talking about what's going to happen next for Tyson Fury. A lot of the talk inevitably is around what happens next for Derek Chisora. Won't ask Frank Warren because obviously earlier this year he said that Chisora should retire before putting him in with the best heavyweight in the world. But what next for Derek Chisora? Is it time? Do you think this will be the last we see of him?
No, I don't, because I don't think he wants to pack it in, and I think he's in a similar situation to Tyson in that he wants boxing in his life, he needs boxing in his life for that structure, that focus. He has an ego, so I think he likes the attention, and I think he'll keep going. It just depends what he decides to do. I wouldn't really like to see somebody who's been in the amount of hard fights that he's been in go down the route of being used as an opponent for someone like Dubois, which would be a really obvious next fight for Dubois to take, or even someone like Joyce. I don't think Joyce's people would want that one necessarily, because I think they want to be aiming higher than that.
Horrible.
But that would be bad.
It's a dangerous fight for Dubois.
Yeah, we're going to come on. We'll come on to that in a bit.
But you know, I think.
Well, I gotta go soon, so I'll just say.
I think that is. I don't want to see that. I wouldn't. You know, I would like to see them get him an opponent who he can beat and go out on a win. And, you know, make a bit of a fuss of him if that's what he wants and all that kind of thing. I think there would be promoters and people who would be up for that. But I don't see him doing that. I think that we are going to see what we've seen quite a few times before, where the sport ends up retiring them and not the other way around.
The biggest fight for the biggest amount of money.
That's it. And he's not going to really pay too much attention to the consequences health-wise.
He'll just stop when the money gets not to what he got a mind. He got a figure in his mind. He's getting overpaid. That's the truth. Like they all do now, these big guys. And good luck to him. I don't blame him for 1 second. And he's right. What he's saying. I know he had some analogy about, you know, having sex with the most beautiful woman or something. Why would you stop? And I sort of understand what he's saying. But like, it's first of all, I thought Derek, you should untie it first, Derek. That's what you should do. But either way, I just like he'll keep going. He'll keep going until the money gets less. And once the money gets less, he'll go, I'm not boxing for that. And they'll go, that's all we can afford to give you, Derek. And he'll go, okay, goodbye. And he'll walk away. I understand that boxing's in his life. I'm not too sure. I don't know. But I'm not too sure. I think he's solely money motivated. That's it. And if the money's not there, he'll miss the limelight. But he'll still flit it around, I think, for a little while. And then I just think he wants the money. And you know, at least he's listen, I'm not a fan of his, but at least he's upfront about it. At least he said, I'm in it for the money, that's it. He don't sort of go, I'm in it now to prove I'm the best fighter in the world, and he wants to test, and deep down he's probably happy he's boxed for the world title, and he wants to be a world champion. And you know, we go back to the Klitschko fight all those years ago for Tali, and he didn't win it, of course, and he was never going to win it, but he did tremendously well. For the experience he had.
That was a hard fight. You think about the fact that he's still boxing years and years later. I mean, you give a good account of himself, but Vitaly.
Listen, he's had some horrendously horrible, like rubbish fights where you almost thought he shouldn't get paid. Like, and he has. He has some fights where you go, whatever he's not getting paid enough. He's been that sort of fighter for me.
Yeah.
So you know, good luck to him. It is what it is. But we got sold a dud, I think. On Saturday night, and we knew it, and everyone involved knew it. But listen, the job of a promoter is to sell you whatever they got, and they did it, and they did their job well. So they Tyson Fury was with the right people, didn't he? Because if they could sell that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
6,000 people. These were the right people.
Absolutely, and as I say, it was packed. It was kind of like, I mentioned this before we got going. It's sort of like a Vegas crowd, really. Where I remember looking around during the Dubois Lerena fight, I'm thinking, it's not 60,000 in
That was
here.
maybe partly the weather, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then all of a sudden, the main event was coming up next, and then everybody just sort of appeared like they do in Vegas. In Vegas, it's like a ghost town until the main event's next, and then everybody.
I think Spurs is a great. It's just a really, really good stadium because I was talking to someone from there at the press conference, and they were saying that what makes it different to other football grounds is that, you know, the ability to serve people a lot quicker on the concourses is there and all that kind of stuff. It's just a much more fan-friendly experience than the majority of football grounds, basically. So
that's what the Americans have got it right, haven't they?
And I think that's what they've modelled it on, basically, and that's why. And they've sold it to NFL, and you know they could cater for all sorts of different things. So. I didn't think the cold was that big a thing, to be honest. I mean, I covered
bloody
football.
Freezing.
I mean, I covered football for a long time, so it just it reminded me of that. But if you could have sat down at 8 o'clock, say, and you were done by 10:15. It wasn't that long to be out in it.
I was there from 5:30 in the cold. Were you there for Isaac Lowe?
No, I got in at about 6:30, I think.
Bloody freezing.
To be fair to Frank Watermine, he's just boxing's greatest gambler. He really is. Like he's one of those guys that just go, like you can't do that, Frank. That won't sell, Frank. He's like, well, we'll see. Like, you know what I mean? Most people, I think a lot of people are more pragmatic, innit? And go, well, it won't sell. It's outdoors in the winter. And Chisora's not had 12 losses, and even though he won his last one, he looked fantastic. And Fury's so much better than him, and we've seen the fight before, and everyone's going to moan about it. How can we sell it? And Frank goes, well, we'll see.
I mean, you're right.
He knows his product. He really do.
Yeah.
I
mean, the big gamble was the weather was a gamble, but the thing is, once people are there, they've already paid, haven't they?
Yeah.
If it had rained on the night, then that would have been a problem because rain in the winter comes in sideways, not straight down. And that would have been chaos, wouldn't it? Heavy rain in there would have been absolute chaos because there was a nice big canopy, but we were probably about 10 feet back from ringside, TalkSport, maybe a bit more than that, say 20, and we were right on the edge of the canopy. So rain would have come in and got to the ring easily. Okay, they rolled that dice and they had a result.
They did. We weren't so lucky. The people who were out for Fury Pianetta in Belfast were reviewed there for that. Frampton Jackson undercard. That was horrible. That rained, and that was in August as well.
I was safe there. I was thinking. I was also for as it goes, Chisora and David Hay was the same.
Yeah, Upton Park. Yeah.
I was under the canopy again there, but all the ones who paid a fortune for the tickets were like in the rain, and they were getting chucked ponchos, and all the ones who had the cheaper seats were all in the stand nice and dry.
I had floor seats for Klitschko Hay, which is the worst possible place to be. If everybody was just ramming into ringside, but we couldn't get in there because security had finally got their act together. So we're standing on chairs in the pouring rain.
Right,
we paid a couple of €100.
Let's move on because superstar Barry has to leave early. He's got another job. No, I'm joking. Anyway. Yes, so that's next for Chisora. I think we're all in agreement that, ideally, maybe, potentially be his last fight. Don't think anybody thinks he will. I think they probably make that Dubois fight. I think.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's probably going to be next for him. But of course, Tyson Fury at the end of the fight went over, hit his face off with Alexander Usyk and Joe Joyce. Come on to that in a bit. But that's surely got to be the only fight next. Fury versus Usyk, all the marbles at heavyweight.
Yeah, and like I said, with the people involved, I am as confident as you can be that it will happen because Saudi Arabia are only interested in the biggest fights. That is the biggest fight. They've got all the money you could possibly need to make it happen. And I don't see... Well, both sides want it, don't they? It seems to be as simple as that. And I think that between them, Top Rank and Queensberry particularly, but probably also K2 will want to structure a deal whereby it wasn't like it was last time and the rights was all a bit strange and it ended up being an auction basically. I think they'll want to nail that down so that BT have got it in the UK, ESPN have got it in America. They're not gonna. But we thought that would probably happen last time.
But then again, you don't know.
But Sky would be in the market for that.
If it was a straight bid, they definitely would be.
They would say Saudi don't need the money, do they? So they're just going to want it on the biggest platform.
Yeah,
you could have said that. They could just give it to ITV for nothing, couldn't they? Or BBC for nothing.
Yeah, I mean the money always kind of matters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think they would be perfectly happy with.
It's a shame it's got to go away from
sport and ESPN. I mean, ESPN's a massive audience, isn't it? So, and I think they probably, speaking to a few people who were in and around it, more on the organisational side, I'm not necessarily sure that the Saudis would actually want to organise it again.
Maybe
I think they found it pretty tedious.
Who knows?
To be honest with you,
with regards to the broadcaster, obviously Top Rank have their deal with Sky. Maybe there's something that can be done there. Usyk's boxed on Sky with great success, by the way. I mean, there's this kind of narrative that Usyk is a kind of foreigner that nobody knows about. His last fight, Avanesyan Joshua, over 1 million pay-per-view buys at a good time, and obviously he won that fight as well. It's a massive fight. It's the only fight that I want to see next. Tyson Fury versus Joe Joyce is a great fight. And he may be a harder fight for Tyson Fury than Alexander Usyk. Personally, I don't think so. I think Usyk's the harder fight, but he may well be. But I don't want to see that next. I love Joe Joyce, and a few people had a pop at me because I didn't really like seeing Joe Joyce in the three-way face-off.
Yeah, he didn't really need...
It didn't need to be there, man.
Fair play to him for getting involved.
Yeah,
but it didn't really need to be
he's
there.
pushed up, then he.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine he just decided to kind of amble up there. Look, and I know it's kind of theatrics, and I know it's Fury doing his WWE thing, and he's shouting and Usyk and stuff, but that was just getting there to the point where, like, the more Fury shouted, the kind of the more stoic Usyk became. And I felt like if it had just been left a little longer, we might have seen something really, really interesting.
Joyce will get his turn, though.
He will. And
Confident.
look, I know, I completely understand that him getting up there gets his face in there, and it's great for his profile and all of that stuff. But Fury Usyk is the fight. That's the only fight I want to see next.
He's a WB regular champion.
There you go.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to him shortly. But
another good thing about getting that fight
Manuel
made...
Charr should have got it. Where's Manuel Charr gone?
Another good thing about getting that fight for Undisputed made, I hope anyway, is that whoever wins that, you know, who knows about rematches and stuff, but whoever wins that, at that point, the belts just aren't important anymore.
Yeah,
and they
you're
can
the
just
man
go
now.
after whatever fights they want, and the belts will then splinter, and more people can get opportunities, because all 4 belts have been with 2 people. Identities have changed, but all 4 belts have been with 2 people, and we've had plenty of rematches for a long time now, which has meant that not that many people have had an opportunity.
Yeah, I love a rematch. I think if they do have a rematch, then the belts should be fragmented.
Yeah, well, that may well happen because
there's some reason otherwise.
But that probably would happen, wouldn't it? Because the sanctioning bodies will all sanction a unification, but a rematch, as long as you get a winner in the first fight, wouldn't be.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, so the WBC, for example, they don't grant rematch clauses for their titles.
If the first one was a draw,
do they not?
No.
If the first
they don't recognise them in contracts ahead of time, so there has to be a request made.
Yeah, if the first fight was a draw, then you want to see a rematch.
Yeah, or controversial,
and it would still be a unification. So then that would work. But if there's a winner,
now the fights happened this past weekend as well. A lot of the talk in the last couple of weeks has been about the IBF and calling Filip Hrgović for the mandatory. Now that fight's happened at the weekend, and I know that was a big part of Alexander Usyk making his way over to London, was to be like, look, I'm here. We want the Undisputed next. Like, that's the best way to kind of put a message out to all the sanctioning bodies that this is the fight we're going to make next, Fury versus Usyk. But as we saw with Eddie Hearn and some of the reports coming from there with the IBF, Matchroom, Eddie Hearn requested an immediate purse bid. And if you request an immediate purse bid, if the purse bid gets called, you can't then apply for an exemption. And the reason why at the time they couldn't apply for an exemption was because Fury was engaged for a fight with Derek Chisora. Now that's out of the way. Fury's won. Fury's team can now request an exemption with the IBF, the WBA, whoever. Of course, the WBA next in the rotation anyway, so that rids that. There doesn't appear to be any obstacles from making that fight other than Tyson Fury. If Tyson Fury wants to make the fight will happen. If he doesn't want to make the fight, wants to go a different way, then we might not see it. That's kind of from the horse's mouth. Interview with Alex
I can't
Gracia.
see why he wouldn't want to make the fight. I'm pretty sure he would, because as much as this is the biggest fight to him financially. It's a legacy defining fight.
It really
I
is,
hate the word legacy, but it pretty much is, isn't it? No, then he's the only one he hasn't beat is Joshua, but Joshua now is not the Joshua he was when they were talking about that fight a few years ago.
That's still a big fight.
It's a big fight, but I mean for when Joshua was top of the tree, so he's beat Wilder. It was top 1 or 2 at the time, and so literally for a while it was Joshua and Wilder were 1 and 2, and then Fury came back, and then Joshua I'm here, and then he beat Wilder, so he made him number 1, number 2. They were still arguing who you thought was best. I always thought Fury, but a lot of people still thought Joshua. Then the wheels come off Joshua, unfortunately, a little bit, and he rebuilds. But now Usyk's taking his place, so there's clearly now a 1 and a 2.
Yeah,
and it's them 2. So yeah, I don't care about the belts. That's the best fight financially, and for legacy and all that, and for your standing in the sport, and then you do say, like, I'm the Lennox Lewis of my era or whatever. You do say I'm the Muhammad Ali of my era, whatever you want to say. You do, because at the minute he's fantastic and he's brilliant. He's just such a clever fighter. But still, there's, you can pick holes in anyone's career, and his would be, well, you beat 2 really good fighters. But there was a lot of years in between those fights, and that's it, really.
Where does Alexander Usyk measure up against Vladimir Klitschko, Deontay Wilder, as far as great wins for Tyson Fury. Where would that rank?
It does. No, he doesn't have the size, and that's the worry. But he's such a clever and adapting fighter when he's in the ring. He's such a thinker that he's a puzzle and a problem for anyone. He overcomes size with his patience and his thought and his technical ability. So, he's shown that already, I think. And he's starting to fill into his weight a little bit more as well. And I think we saw that. And he doesn't try and fight fire with fire. He knows he can't beat you for strength. He knows he can't be leaning on Tyson Fury. But he'll know Fury will make mistakes. And he'll know that. And he'll know he'll try and frustrate Fury. So it's a dangerous fight. It doesn't have the danger of a Wilder fight where, if I make a mistake, I'm going to go sleep, which it had. But it has a different danger for Fury, and I think it may be a worse danger because Fury, because he's such a maniac, almost doesn't care if he gets knocked out. I think. Look at the third Wilder fight. The second one, okay, fair enough. He just went right at him, but like the third one, he got hurt and he still carried on. He just didn't give a shit. Like he's been on death's door. He was in the first at the end of the round, at the end of the fight in the first one, and got up from nowhere. And then the second one, he just walks right through him. Then the third one, then when he gets hurt again, he still does. I know what I'm doing. I know. He wanted to get involved in a fight. He almost like he's tempting fate all the time. But for someone like him to be totally outboxed would be worse. I think he can accept getting knocked out. And someone like Joshua, it's like But for Fury, it's like because he's been a boxer all his life, getting knocked out, so he just caught him with a shot. But being outboxed is like he wouldn't be able to get his head around that. I think so. There's different fear there for him.
Andy, what version of Fury do you think we'll see? We were in the post-fight press conference with him, and he said, look, he thinks he could outbox Usyk. He thinks he could get on the back foot, and he said he thinks he's faster. He said he thinks he's got better feet. He alluded to Usyk being hit in the Chaz Witherspoon fight, the Chisora fight, the Joshua fight. Do we think we see the I guess we call it the old Fury, the Vladimir Klitschko version of Fury, a Wilder 1, or do we see the seek and destroy Tyson Fury that we saw particularly in the second and third Wilder fights?
I think we'll most likely see a bit of a mix of the two, because I think to slow someone like Usyk down, you've got to hit him. It doesn't really matter if you hit him really clean, but you've got to lay something on him in those first few rounds and make him think a little bit and make him stop being able to turn you and move you in the way that he did to Joshua continually pretty much for 24 rounds. And Fury has got great movement, we know that, and he is a very clever fighter. And I think with Wilder, the stylistic shift was massively entertaining, but I think he also thought after the first fight, it was purely pragmatic as well. It wasn't just him wanting to give the crowd what they wanted. It was, I think he looked at the first fight and just thought, okay, well, I could do that again, and if the judges do their job, then I'll get the win. But I'm assuming that he kind of felt something in there or saw something in there that made him think, actually, if I'd gone for that a bit more, I think I could have stopped him. And that's why he really made the change. It's not to say that he'll be like that forever, because he's got too much in his locker to just choose to do something that isn't necessarily the best thing to do. Other people have to do that because they can't do it more than one way, but he definitely can.
Is this a harder fight than the Wilder fight, Usyk?
I don't think it is, because
it's different though. It's totally different, so I don't know.
It's completely different,
it's
isn't it?
Technically harder.
There's no possible way that Usyk can knock Fury out if Wilder can't.
Well,
I'll say that. I'm confident hurt him. Had him going with a shot.
What I was saying about getting knocked out, he didn't have the power. There's not that clear, obvious danger that every shot can hurt me. But shots you don't see from a different angle can have a different effect, and we all know that. I think the problem he has with the reason why he has to be aggressive with, and you think he's going to be playing into Usyk's hands, he has to be aggressive with Usyk, because Usyk, if you go back to Usyk as a cruiserweight when he's clearly at his best, he never danced around.
No,
he was great footwork, but he was the pressure fighter.
Yeah, he was right on you.
Like we say, we're all those Eastern Bloc type of fighters, pressure with the feet, and in and out, and he blocks a lot of shots. So if he gets that momentum and that rhythm in his work, and Fury's dancing round, he will cut the ring off, and then all of a sudden he'll be able to slip inside punches of Fury, and he'll be able to get in close, and Fury, and he does that leaning back, but then he'll get because he's such a great judgment of distance, Usyk, and he's adapting more as a heavyweight every time. He'll get that right. He'll slide in. So when Fury leans back, he'll be right on him, and he'll be punching up, and he'll know better, because he's technically just all better. He thinks better. He thinks on his feet constantly, so he has to push him back. and let Usyk try and react. But then when because Usyk takes a step back, Fury just jumps on him again. And if Fury moves behind the punches, he maintains that distance while pushing him back. And then Usyk can't fire. Usyk has to just be defensive, move, and try and I'm going to say it, pivot around. But it's a defensive pivot, so it's harder for him to do it. It's much harder. And so I think, pushing him back is the way that Fury wins. If Fury dances round, he can win that way. But it gives Usyk an opportunity to get that
builds up a head of steam.
Yeah, and that's how he likes to fight.
I'm not sure whether or not Fury. I know he's to a degree in the White fight, but I mean, you talk about two very different fighters in White and Usyk. He just kind of held the distance, wait for the opportunity to bring the right uppercut through the middle, and then the fight was over. I don't see him allowing, as you said there, Usyk that kind of time and trying to walk Usyk onto a shot. I think he's going to have to basically box how he did against Steve Cunningham after a few rounds, where he's physically imposing himself.
But Usyk won't do what White, because these guys are bigger and slower and not as clever. They're good fighters, but they're not. So Usyk will go boom this way, boom that way, boom this way, boom that way, and he won't keep still. So he won't. Is he going to attack? And he won't. And he'll threaten to attack, and he won't do it. Then he will. Then he'll come in with a jab, and then he'll screw shot it up through the middle, and so he'll give you a different look every time he attacks, and it's almost like he's testing how you react to what he does. He did it with Joshua in the second fight brilliantly. Just, Joshua reacts to all this stuff, and then when he figures it out, he's still got to react. He's still thinking. He's not planning. It's not a master plan, but it's sort of like a natural thing that they do, because they do as an amateur. So they don't make any mistakes. So you're just in and out with the feet, and you're prodding. So I think that's what he'll do. And if he allows him to do that, if Fury just stays there waiting too long, thinking I'll just catch him when he comes in, he'll throw that uppercut, but then he's going to be on the outside of him or the inside of him, and he go, why all the others big massive lumps I fire, when they throw, they're in front of me and I know exactly where they are and I'll hit them, like Chisora, for example. And Usyk won't do that. And
is this a harder fight for Fury than the Joe Joyce fight, Usyk?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Joyce fight, is one that we do all want to see, because we're kind of fascinated by Joyce in the regard to when is he going to run into someone who can hurt him. Yeah. That's and that's a little bit unfair to him, because he's better than that. But it's just that is the question we all want an answer to, because someone's going to have to be able to do it. But we've been saying that for a while now, and no one has been able to do it. But I think that Fury will find Joyce easy to hit. And he will hit him hard often, and I think maybe Fury could be that guy to actually hurt him, not because he's necessarily the massive single punch power merchant that Joyce has maybe been in with already or will be in the future, but he'll just be able to hit him hard enough and more regularly than other people that it will be a problem.
And if he can't, you just go back to default mode. Pre Wilder 2.
Yeah.
And dance and flick him and lean right back. And then because what Fury does really well is ties you up in knots.
Yeah.
No, he's like an octopus all of a sudden. You got 2 arms, and you get close, and you got 8 arms, and you go, how's he tying me up? He ties you up, tickles you in the ear, and grabs your bum.
Yeah.
No, he does that. He gets you all,
and he can still do all of that if he wants to.
And he leans on. Yeah, it's all in the lock. Yeah. He leans on you.
The leaning on him and the spoiling, I think he can definitely still do. I'm not sure we'll ever see the return of the Fury, the dance master.
No, I don't either.
I don't think we ever see that.
Don't think that he can't. People think he can't do that anymore. He's done that all his life. That's default mode.
That's hardwired, isn't it?
Honest God, I can get up now and bounce around like for 30 seconds. You've done something all your life.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's second nature thing of you. You know what I mean? It's like that engine you have. You can do that.
Yeah, and he does have that kind of.
He's just found a better. He's found a better formula for himself, because he's so talented. Better formula he can win this way, and it ticks more boxes.
It's not even necessarily from a physical perspective. I think we've discussed this before. Once you start coming forward and knocking people out, and you're the big destructive heavyweight powerhouse, and you see some little cruiserweight in front of you, I think that's going to be part of his. But as you've mentioned, I'm going to reference to the other Barry Jones bingo, Joe Kawasaki, being able to change a fight during a fight. If he goes out there and he tries to put it on Usyk, and all of a sudden he's finding the angles, or vice versa, he goes out there and tries to box him and he's still allowing him on the inside, he can change Fury, and he can change what he's doing.
That's what would be really great.
I'm really fascinated
because you've got 2 people who can do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And the very best fighters can do that. And the criticism that most people, me included, would have of AJ. And for me, it's not even really a criticism. It's a product of the fact that he's not actually been boxing that long, is that he can't really do that. Whereas in Fury and Usyk, you've got two guys who can adapt on the fly to what the other one is doing. And that's what makes it so good.
The difference with Joshua and them two is apparently Joshua takes instructions really well. But he needs instruction.
That's it.
So listen, which for the trainer is fantastic. You tell a fighter and he'll do it. That's great.
Yeah, he's a quick learner.
Someone like Fury and even Usyk now, they sort of think for themselves.
Yeah.
Which is also a great thing. But that's why they can box round by round. I said that about Joshua. Like Fury, you can do you got 3 rounds and you're 3 different fighters.
Yeah.
No, it's all similar, but I mean you can 3 different styles. And Usyk's not quite that actually, but he does do things differently. Usyk's probably gone not more to his locker, I wouldn't say, but certainly does things.
He has more intricacies to his work.
Yeah, but Fury, you can literally just spin. Spin his style to a totally different. What's this fighter?
Yeah, 1 minute you've got like a southpaw on the back foot, and the next minute you've got an orthodox destroyer.
That's
it.
And he's a massive lump as well. People usually also he's not a puncher, and he's not like one of those he's not a Ken Norton. But he's still a 19, 20, still
he hits
mad.
plenty hard enough.
Yeah.
And also, he got speed. And with speed, like you see with Wilder, with speed at that size.
That is power.
And also,
scary
when you see him, like when you see him up close at a press conference or whatever, like we did last week, yeah, he's really tall. But he doesn't... It's really, really strange because he's actually in pretty good nick. He's carrying some spare around the love handles, and people will look at that and just think, oh, he doesn't look like a ripped, conditioned athlete like Joshua. But actually, apart from that, he's quite lean these days, even though he's 19 stone
Let me tell you all the muscles here in the front of your body, it's just all cosmetic. I know nothing about I'm not an expert at all that crap. But all the powers in your back of your body, I've always been told so like you see punchers, you always see they got big traps, big legs, all the big muscles in the back of your body, the ass and the back. So that's where the power comes from. So all this here looks great, and it obviously helps.
Yeah.
But it's not the defining factor of whether you can punch or whether you got power, whether you're physically strong.
Yeah.
Because natural strength is better than what's the word I'm looking for? The weight. So you find strength.
Yeah, Fury's got an absolutely massive frame, and actually he could weigh a load more than that if he wanted to.
And
if
he has
really
done.
wanted
But he made that comment around the Vladimir fight when he said, look, if he doesn't train for a few months, he's a cruiserweight. I don't train for a few months. I'm 26, 27.
Yeah, but I mean, if he wanted to go in the gym and just murder the weights for a while, he could be absolutely
He
massive.
could be 21 and a half
Easy, and it would be
and still be able to box.
Yeah, and it would hang, and it would hang on that frame, and he's actually for the size he is. Like I was looking at him, like I said, I was looking at him and just thinking, all right, he could trim down around the waist if he wanted to, but he doesn't really need to. And actually, the rest of him, you look at his face, like he's pretty lean.
I tell you what's really good for him before we go, I guess, is he flicks his jab out. And he flicks, you see it when it's slow motion, you see
Back of the glove, yeah.
But I know that slow mo, but this stings.
That little whip.
It stings. It stings at a lighter weight, because you throw it, but then when you go like that, flick it, it's that whip, and it really hurts. But at his weight, that's why they tire. That bum, and it looks like nothing. But I think that they're taking those constantly, and that's the ones that like you see is the state on what's his name, Chisora's face.
Yeah,
and it's most of it's that.
Yeah, that damage to the eye was that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Right, we've only got about 10 minutes or so before part-time Barry leaves us. So
paper on, don't I?
Let's use that 10 minutes to discuss the other trilogy this past weekend, which of course was from Phoenix, Arizona. Look at his little smiling face. Look at him.
I didn't watch it.
Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. I think it's probably safe to say
robbery
concluded their rivalry. I don't think we'll see a fourth fight now. Barry, going to come to you first.
Bullshit, man, absolute bullshit.
Juan Francisco Estrada, a winner, takes the trilogy, if indeed it does end there, 2-1 over Roman Gonzalez. What did you make of the fight?
I thought it was really good. Again, it was brilliant. It was the only trilogy, let's be honest, that was worth watching. It was great. Estrada was brilliant, by the way. Those first 4 or 5 rounds, he was just perfect in every way. The movement, changing direction. Gonzalez, he started slow and he looked a little bit like he lost a step, But you got to give Estrada credit, because what Estrada got more pop in his shots. But every time if Gonzalez got close to him and did what he always does, try to get that smooth rhythm, try to let his hands go, and Estrada would just really quickly switch the other direction and then go pop, pop, pop with like 3 really hard, like sharp shots. And I thought he was great. He was always going to slow down in the end, and then Gonzalez got into it, started to land with some combinations, get some fluency in his work, and you thought, the tide's shifting here a little bit now, and it went down to the last round or two. It did go down the last round or two, and it was a close fight, but I think it was the right winner this time.
Yeah,
I felt gutted to say it, but
yeah, I felt like Chocolatito got jobbed in the second fight. I felt like he won the second fight,
did.
but I felt like, and I'd be interested to hear. We're gonna pretty much go exclusively for Barry because we've only got him for the next 8 or 9 minutes. But it felt like to me the first time that we ever really saw the age being a factor with Chocolatito. I felt like Estrada, for all of his skills, and we know he's a brilliant fighter, and it's not to say to diminish his win at all, but he looked like the younger, fresher man.
He did, and he is. But like I still would say, who else would have beat Gonzalez Saturday?
At super flyweight, yeah. I mean, it's a good.
Do you know what I mean? So like he has lost a step, and if he was finished now, I think it'd be fantastic. Like I wouldn't have no qualms about that, because it is a worry that if that's the start, the clear. Listen, there's been a decline anyway, I think. But
yeah, no, that has.
But if that's a big indicator, I think Estrada was just fantastic. I think he knew he had to start much faster and sharper, and he did. Everything he did was explosive, and he's like that anyway. And maybe he had more success because Gonzalez slow, but I think you got to give. I think we can focus on Gonzalez maybe losing a step, and I love Gonzalez, so I'd rather go down that route. But I think Estrada was just better than the last fight. If it was possible to be, he was sharper in those early rounds, and he knew I think he gambled starting much faster, and potentially tiring down the stretch, and it seemed like that maybe might happen, but not enough. I think you got a spot on. He thought, I'll just start fast and bank as many rounds as I can, because Gonzalez still starts slow in the first round or two, because he has to look into you, but he keeps going, because he makes you work hard all the time. And he did make Estrada work constantly hard, but Estrada would never panic and never worried about the pressure at all. And he was brilliant, and it was a great fight. There was a couple of rounds. Things like the third round was fantastic. I watched that third round, and maybe like the 10th or something like that, and like roughly them sort of marks. And I thought, that's more action in them 2 rounds than I've seen the whole weekend, including like what the show I worked on, which was a good show, by the way. But there was more action in those 2 rounds. And that's how good it was. Again, it was nowhere near as good as the second fight, but still good enough to be a better fight than anything else.
Yeah, I think they'll always have a good fight. We mentioned this in the preview show, no matter how many times they box. But I just felt like, and it's something we mentioned before we went live, that I saw it with Myris Bradis against Jay Optea earlier on in the year, where it just took him, I think, just a little bit longer to get started, and he's just getting to that stage now and there were times where it looked like him, because usually he's a Rolls Royce of a fight. You never see him rushing, but there were times early in the fight you could just see him trying to
it's the
force himself to get going.
Like your vision's just a little half a second off, not even less than that, and the thought process just takes a little bit longer than usual. So it's not massively clear. And so what happens? It happens when fights you're winning. I think that's what happens to fighters. They do in winning, and you don't see it. But then when you get a Estrada that was so sharp, and obviously that the kid who beat Bradis was so young and fit and energetic, that then you go, hang on, maybe he has slowed down a bit. And it's not massively obvious, because, again, Gonzalez could still beat most people. But, yeah, I think that was the first time I thought there is maybe a decline. But Estrada was just fantastic. He really was. And, again, even for him, the longevity in his career has been amazing. When was their first fight? 2012
2011, I think.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what I mean? It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
To keep that level of excellence, them two. And long before that for Gonzalez, by the way, because that was Estrada's really coming out party when he got beat. But I mean, he's showing, I can compete at this level. But for Gonzalez, the level of excellence for such a long period is just not almost unheard of. But it was great. It was a great night, great fight. I wasn't there, but I stayed up for it because I'm a hero.
Did you stay up or did you sleep and then wake?
No, I stayed up. I wanted to sleep, but
you were too excited.
yeah, I got the internet, and
watching various websites.
Yeah. No, but yeah, no, I stayed up for it in the end. Yeah, it was too because I think the broadcast started quite early, actually, early enough to keep you interested, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. We were waiting for Tyson Fury for a little bit of time, but managed to catch the co-main and the main event. Right, Barry, before we let you go, who next for Estrada and what next for Chocolatito?
This is what we want now. And you're going to talk to the fight when I go. We want Sonny Edwards to stand, what's his name on his head, Martinez on his head, move up and fight Estrada.
Yeah, I'd be keen on that, definitely.
Okay. The timescale on that's not looking great. So who's Estrada going to box next?
In Abu Dhabi. Well, where's Bam Rodriguez?
Down at flyweight.
He's moved up, hasn't he?
Ioka?
Nakatani's moved up, have he?
Nakatani's moved up, yeah, but he's boxing.
Ioka would be good.
Ioka would be a good fight. Estrada, Ioka.
I don't see. I mean, you'd imagine Estrada would win, but it'd be good.
At the top now, only Estrada. Like that's the thing. He is. I was always denying it, but he is the number one now, unfortunately. But for me, but he's brilliant, and I think him and Nakatani would be a great fight.
Chocolatito.
Oh, go now, innit? Go, you've done it now. The thing is, he can still beat it. He still beat most people. But what's going to happen now if the thought of him getting beat by someone not good enough to beat him breaks my heart.
We spoke about it before. What about Estrada-Chocolatito or Rungvisai?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, to be honest. It was never stylistically. It was always a fight that was hard for him, and we spoke about that, haven't we? But I thought because he looked so good against Estrada in the last fight, and he schooled Martinez, but then look at the way Martinez is performing, you can see why he did. I thought that because Sarungavasai slowed down a little bit, that he can still be, because the way he fights, he's going to walk onto shots, and he get hit, and he hit so hard, Sarungavasai, that because I don't think their movement around the body is the same as it used to be from Gonzalez.
You don't want to be coming out on an angle.
Yeah, he's more route one than he used to, isn't he? Yeah, he's more just. He's always been pressure, but now he's all just pure pressure. But yeah, so I don't want to see that anymore. I'd wanted to see it before Saturday, but no, I don't.
Okay, well, I think we're probably there now. It's worth keeping Barry for long enough just so we could try and pronounce Sarungavasai.
Sarungavasai said it.
But now we'll let him go.
Sarungavasai.
Say it again.
Sirakat, is it Sirakat?
So, close enough. That's the Welsh. That's the Welsh pronunciation.
See these posh people I like.
Right. Does anybody have any questions for Barry before he fucks off? Anybody?
I'm not coming again.
Going once.
Ask a question because I'm not going to be here again. This is my last one.
Barry's. You've got a live retirement from Barry. Question for Barry. Anybody? We've got 1 minute. We'll give him until the minute ticks down. I'll let you at 10. What are we going to do about the cameras? Where am I going to go? Am I going to sit in Barry's seat?
Good, because I farted loads in it.
That's all right. Okay. Do we have any? Don't answer a question with a question. Okay.
There you go. See.
I'm not sure that was necessarily aimed at me. Any more for Barry Jones? Barry, why don't we see you on BT Sport anymore? Good question.
Yeah. Ask Dev Sani. I'm joking. No, they got Cal Frampton. They don't need me. Bloody hell.
All right. Okay. I think Barry's gonna go now. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I think we had about 20 seconds, but Barry's gonna go. Triple D was very dodgy. Barry's thoughts. I think me and Andy are gonna come onto that shortly. Barry, what about Martinez fight? A robbery, surely.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think the Martinez fight was a robbery?
No.
Samuel Carmona?
No, I don't know robbery, but all I kept thinking was Sonny Edwards beat him with his eyes closed. I said he beat him. I said that before. I always said that I thought he'd stand him on his head. Yeah. But it was clear.
To be fair, you caveated it with he'll either stand him on his head or get knocked out in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, I take away that bit now. Let's just remember the good stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, Sonny plays it.
Right, Barry Jones.
See you later.
Thanks very much.
Fuck you. I mean,
yeah, he's always welcome.
See ya.
All right, okay. Oh, I feel extra important now sitting in Barry's seat. There we go. We have to take the extra cushion on here that we put on there to make him look tall. I have to take that one away and put it underneath my t-shirt instead. There we go. So it is now myself and the one and only Andy Clarke. Here he is. What he's doing. I haven't seen him do that since the Freitas fight.
Zinger.
Right, okay, so it's now myself and Mr. Andy Clarke. We're going to go back to the Fury-Chisora free card. A lot of people asking about Daniel Dubois. We sat in here a couple of days ago, a week or so ago, and I think we all kind of expected Dubois to win the fight. I felt like it was going to be a potentially tricky fight early. Wasn't necessarily expecting it to be that tricky early, but a tricky night for Daniel Dubois. And you know, for a split second, Barry, for a split second, it looked like, I'm fucking glad he's gone. But anyway, for a split second, it looked like it had all gone horribly wrong for Daniel Dubois.
It did. It really did. And it's such a good example of why you can just never feel like you've seen it all in boxing, because we'll see variations of different things. But that was something, because he definitely did get hit on the top of the head with the left hand, which caused him to give some ground, but then his knee buckled underneath him, and in real time it looked strange to me. I couldn't quite work out what had happened, whether the hit on the top of the head had taken his legs away or what had gone on. But then the next two knockdowns, which weren't even really knockdowns, he just kind of ended up going down.
Yeah.
You could see that there was a problem with the back leg, and lower leg injuries, although rare, really are a problem, because that's where you get your power from. It's not just a balance thing. And the bell went early at the end of that round. I didn't notice that in all of the commotion, but apparently I've heard different things, 8 seconds, 11 seconds, something like that, I think it was. I don't think that honestly really made that much difference, because Lerena wasn't, he wasn't getting on the front foot looking to finish things. He was just kind of waiting for Dubois to collapse, which it looked like he absolutely would. And in the end, it was an impressive win, because it took him a bit of time to work out. I'd imagine it's pretty freaky when something like that happens to you, because you'll need to try and figure out what it actually is that your knee will allow you to do and what it won't allow you to do, because you can't just keep using it in the way that you always do, because it won't do that for you. And that's what he did in the first round. In the second round, probably with some help from Shane, I didn't hear what he said in the corner between rounds, he managed to figure that out. And that's not easy, because it's totally counterintuitive, because he spent his whole life throwing punches with that lightning bolt starting in his right boot, wasn't he, basically? But he kept it really simple, and that's where the technique comes in, isn't it? And the natural power comes in, because when you've got that kind of leg problem, what you can't do is fall in or reach for anything, or you've just got to have very, very simple movements. Those feet have got to stay the same distance apart. It really is back to ground zero basics. And he did that, and he still won, because he's got that right hand. And there was nothing wrong with that stoppage. People were moaning about the stoppage, but it was right above me, and he was gone, Lerena. He was absolutely done. And the corner weren't too impressed with it, but the fighter, he was fine with it, because I don't think he really knew what was happening, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of start at the end of that and work our way back, I suppose. I think on the initial look, I thought, oh, called it now, because I knew it was the end of the round, and you consider all of the issues that Daniel Dubois had in the first round. And then I saw the replay, and I saw the head go in, and I saw Lerena afterwards. He made no complaints about it. So I don't have any problem with the stoppage. I put out a tweet and said, like, what a massive win that was for Dubois. Look, all of the issues that he had in the fight, and there are significant issues when you look at it. I mean, he got caught with a very silly shot. The shot that he got caught with, you should not be getting caught with in the first round of a title fight. Whether you got a WBA regular, world title, European, whatever, you shouldn't be getting caught with a shot like that. Kind of ambled his way into punching range and got hit with a shot, like against a guy who's always going to be at his most dangerous early in the fight. But considering all of the stick that he got after the Joyce fight, where he went down on one knee and had everybody questioning him at the time, he was 23 years old, calling him a quitter, questioning his heart, questioning his desire. There was a moment, more than one moment in that first round, particularly knockdowns 2 and 3, which again weren't knockdowns. He kind of sort of fell, but sort of jumped and kind of threw himself to the floor at times, where I thought this has gone horribly wrong. And I didn't think that he was going to get himself back up. And then you start in those, it's always the way the brain works, particularly when you're watching live sport, the amount of things that go through your head in that one split second. Where's he going to go from here? How does he go back from that? Like, and for him to compose himself, as you said, I wasn't watching the broadcast, I was there. So I didn't hear the instructions from Shane McGuigan, his trainer in the corner. I did speak to Shane afterwards. He said that his instructions were basically find out how hurt you are. Don't throw anything. Just try and get moving. Find out, see what
work
the
out what that need and won't do.
Can you throw a shot with it? Can you?
Yeah.
And at the time, I guess the commentators curse or the Twitter idiots curse, whatever you want to call it. I remember tweeting something about Lerena's boxing like somebody who knows, he feels like he knows he's got his man here and he's in trouble. And that second round, he didn't really put it on Dubois. I felt like he felt like he had more time, and he just gave him that round to kind of get around, feel what was going on with the knee.
But I understand why he did
of course,
that. Because we were saying the same thing in commentary, me and Spencer. He'd seen him just collapse twice in the first round, because you're right, that first knockdown, that and the initial injury, that was caused by a punch. And he's thinking this is only a matter of time. What I don't want to do is walk onto one, because this lad's a big puncher. And I referenced Hay against Bellew. It's not really the same, but it's similar, because Bellew, from the injury onwards, is thinking, I just need to stay out of the way of these big wild swings, and I'm going to win, because this can't go on forever. And I don't know what Shane would have done necessarily if the fight had just kind of gone on and on and on, because at some point probably enough is enough. And if the knee collapsed a couple more times, the referee at some point would have stopped it and just said, listen, you can't.
Yeah. I thought he was going to do that.
You can't do this. It was interesting that the referee did count him twice in the second and third knockdowns, because I think there were some punches in there. So I'm not saying he shouldn't have. But I saw a fight between, I can't remember who the opponent was now, but it was Sam Hyde, and he had a big problem with his leg, and he just kept going down. And the referee wasn't counting him because he was just collapsing. But he did say to him, look, you can't keep collapsing or I'm going to stop it, because you're clearly unfit to fight. And so he just went to the ropes and stayed there. But yeah, he was a mad 3 rounds. Like I say, you feel like you've seen most things. And people were talking about the 3 knockdown rule, but you never have a 3 knockdown rule in a UK ring.
Yeah,
that never happens.
Explain that, because there'll be people watching this who are talking about the 3 knockdown rule.
So the WBA and their rules and regulations do have the 3 knockdown rule. If you go in there and have a look at it, you'll find it. Quite why they have it, I don't really know, because these days they hardly ever get to apply it. I did have a fight not that long ago. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember it for this reason, where there was the 3 knockdown rule. And it would have been a WBA sanctioned fight, but it could only have been sanctioned by them. If they're sharing anything with the WBO or IBF, that's then unified rules, and unified rules don't have a 3 knockdown rule. So they would have been sanctioning it, and it would have been under a commission in America that allowed it, whose rules also have the 3 knockdown rule. Now they're rare. The British Boxing Board of Control does not have a 3 knockdown rule, and the fight was in Britain. And people talk about the WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO as being governing bodies. They're not governing bodies. They're sanctioning bodies. They sanction fights. So their rules and regulations, to an extent, are quite meaningless, because you'll abide by the rules and regulations of
the local commission,
wherever you are. Yeah.
Which, of course, as Andy's just expertly explained, that's why we didn't get Barry Jones to do it. That was the British Boxing Board of Control. So yeah, 3 knockdown rule, not in.
Yeah, but at the start of a fight, like a lot, particularly on fights from America, they're always keen on this. We don't really do it so much in the UK, but they'll kind of bring up some rules, and the ones they always pick out, I mean, there are loads of rules, but the ones they always pick out are no 3 knockdown rule, can't be saved by the bell, only the referee can stop the fight, mandatory 8 count, and they'll usually say something about 4 rounds needing to be completed and that kind of thing. But that's where it's always in amongst that, because you very, very rarely see it in operation.
Yeah, so that was kind of the 3 knockdowns in the first round. The second round, he was able to survive. Third round, got the stoppage. So I think, look, there are some warning signs there. The fact that he was, the first knockdown was a completely legitimate shot, caught him high on the head. Yeah. He was hurt, and of course injured himself on the way down. So that's a big concern against Kevin Lerena, a guy who boxed at cruiserweight. He couldn't stop Marius Vac, didn't hurt Marius Vac really. So that's a concern. But the positives from it have to be when all looked lost, Daniel Dubois, who, even going back to the amateurs, that's something that people would always question about him. What happens when the punches start coming back? What happens when you hit somebody and they don't go anywhere? That's got to be a positive. But now I feel like they're in a position where they do have to be careful with the next opponent now, I feel, for Daniel. He has the WBA regular belt, which, look, we've been through this several times. Is it a full title? Is it whatever? But it's a belt that, people will want because it means you're mandatory for the WBA title. So he's not going to have any particularly after watching that fight at the weekend, he's going to have no shortage of suitors for that title who want to box him. Who next for him? On the back of that, I mean, we mentioned Derek Chisora. Chisora's going to come. You know what you're going to get from him? Something who's, I guess, easy to prepare for when you compare it to a nippy, tricky cruiserweight moving up southpaw. But who next for him? And how do you think that they should kind of move on really from this this display last weekend?
I do think that Chisora is a decent fight for him. They might feel like that's a little bit too much just yet, possibly, because he's got to heal that knee. Shane said afterwards, didn't he, that he felt like it was a knee ligament, which is a reasonable guess. I think that is what it looked like, but it just depends how bad it was, because that can take a while. Not as long as it would do if you were a footballer, because the range of movement you need from it's not quite the same, and the impacts you're taking aren't anything like the same, obviously. But I agree that you need to be kind of still treating Dubois with kind of kid gloves to an extent, because he, for such a huge bloke, he always strikes me like he really is a young man, isn't he?
He really is, yeah.
He's a young man.
He really is.
And that would have been a very valuable experience for him at the weekend in terms of just something completely unexpected happening, which could easily have totally scrambled him, and he might have just stayed down that third time because it was all just a bit much. That could have happened. I was wondering if he was going to get back up, actually, when he went down the third time, because he was panicking. Because when you go down and it's not from a punch and it's because your knee's gone, that's the kind of situation where you could end up just thinking, you just take a seat. Yeah, I mean, who are you thinking for him next?
We've had some people in here talking about Zhang. I think that's a really dangerous fight. You don't want that. Like for 3 or 4 rounds, Zhang's a dangerous man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that at all. Aggressive southpaw who comes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching him in Saudi.
Yeah, same. And he can be in some really fun fights. I think that's a really dangerous fight.
Yeah.
Really, as much as I really enjoyed watching Zhang against Hrgovic, I think the fact that he lost the fight is really not going to do him any favours.
Kovnatsky? Someone like that, maybe?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of someone who's quite predictable.
Yeah.
Or do you not want that? Do you want someone who he's going to learn a bit more from? And potentially Lerena was like, yeah. Helenius. Is he retired? I think he
got knocked out by Wilder.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not he officially.
I think he might have said at the end that that's him done, but you know, it's easy to say that when you've been chinned by Deontay Wilder. You might fancy it with somebody else.
I know he lost to Kevin Lerena, but I think he still needs rounds. I think he needs time in the ring.
Yeah,
he had the under Shane McGuigan. He's had the blowout wins over Bogdan Dinu.
Yeah.
Chap that he boxed, a New Yorker, Italian American. What's his name? We mentioned him on the other. He boxed on a Jake Paul undercard. Whatever. And then he had the fight against Trevor Bryan. How good was he? I mean, even that went 4 or 5 rounds. And now he's had 2.5 rounds, 2 of them pretty much on one leg or on an injury.
Yeah.
I think they really need to be careful with him because, look, I think he'll learn a lot from that fight. Hopefully, the hope is that he would learn, a bit more about himself. And, when the going gets tough, he's got that in him. And, he would have surely been questioning that on the back of the Joyce fight because everybody else was doing it. He got a real hammering on the back of that Joyce fight for being down on one knee and not getting up. So you would hope that he kind of grows, I guess, psychologically from something like that. But more than that, my thoughts from the weekend are him ambling into that middle distance and getting hit with a shot that you shouldn't be getting hit with in the first round of a title fight. And that's a concern.
He's still quite gung-ho, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he was in the press conference too. He's quite kind of like route one in everything that he does, really.
But that's how he spars and that's how he fights. He goes.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle it, get you out of there. That's kind of okay. Or a freak incident and
He
freak
he hasn't lost any confidence or belief in his power, has he?
No, but we've only seen one fighter really take it,
and that's not necessarily a good thing.
No, exactly, because it's what happens when that doesn't work.
Yeah.
We've only seen one fighter really take it and come back in, which is Joe Joyce. So yeah, I think it's going to be tricky. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly they move him. In recent times, particularly in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's been this talk
about a shit or bust fight for FA Ajagba with him.
Well, so somebody made a very will remain nameless, but somebody made a very interesting point to me. If he's the WBA regular champion, why not try and fight for the WBA title? Whether he's ready or not, he's in position, goes and gets a big fight. He can punch. He can still knock it. He could knock Alexander Usyk out if he catches him clean.
Anyone would be wary of him.
Yeah, for sure.
Correctly so.
But if he loses that fight, then he kind of gets a little bit... He's still such a baby.
Yeah.
Because rather than taking a fight, let's say a Martin Bakole, right? Good fight. Could be a fight where he gets knocked out in. And then where does he go? You lose to Martin Bakole...
That's a good point. I mean, that actually, there is always... That's quite a compelling argument always for stepping right up into a fight where people don't think you're going to win. So there's no real pressure on you in that regard. And if you can acquit yourself well, then it's an easy defeat to explain to yourself. And your stock can rise. And as you say, he's so young. He can come again. It's a real interesting point of his career that he's at, because Saturday, I'm sure, would have been pretty exasperating for the trainer, because, like you say, in a sense, psychologically, it is definitely useful to know that he was able to win despite losing the first round 10-6, and it's not often you say that, but also he didn't really see him tested in any of the ways that he really wanted to see him tested, did he?
Yeah. And that's kind of where he's at now. Like, okay, great, take the positives that you can from it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those, isn't it?
But a lot of the questions that we still need answers to are still very much there, and some of them are an even bigger question now. So I don't know. We're getting some people here saying Bakole starches him. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he may well do, which is kind of the point. Like, you fight like a fringe guy, and they can all punch up at that weight, and he's just been dropped by somebody who didn't expect him to come up and be a puncher. Kevin Lerena wasn't really a puncher down at cruiserweight. So rather than the risk of coming unstuck against the guy top 15, top 20, WBA regular, the WBA's next. Let's say Fury and Usyk happens and Fury wins or Usyk wins. Why not? The belts become fragmented. Fight for the WBA, like the vacant WBA against Anthony Joshua, or a rematch with Joe Joyce or somebody like that.
This is what all the guys will be thinking, because, like I said earlier, one of the reasons I want to see Undisputed is so that we can have that fight, find out who is the number one, and then whoever that is can just kind of stand astride Mount Olympus and throw the belts to the wind. And people will get opportunities, and we could see some really, really tasty matchups. So if you're kind of in the wings waiting for your opportunity, it's coming. Yeah, it's definitely coming, and I think it will come before the end of next year, probably.
Christian Hammer for Dubois, yeah. That's probably around the level that I think, and that's no disrespect to Daniel Dubois. Hammer's he's been game and he's been the distance with some good fighters.
Takam, guys like that, guys who were top 10 not that long ago, or top 15 not that long ago, but aren't anymore. But you could probably still try and make a case that they are. It's. I think that's probably where we're looking.
Takam's still very tough. He go the distance with Arsenbek Makhmudov. He got dropped early
halfway
in the fight,
with Joyce, didn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, I think a few questions, of more than a few questions, I think still there for Daniel Dubois, but time very much on his side. We've got another question here about Jermaine Franklin, who of course was went the distance with Dillian White in a fight where a lot of people certainly had it very, very close, if not had him.
They did a lot of sparring, didn't they?
Yeah, so they sparred. They did 10 rounds 3 times. Which not everybody does with Daniel Dubois, because he is, he's very heavy-handed and he spars like he fights. He can straight through you, and if you can't handle it, then you're going to be out of there. So, I mean, is that too dangerous? Is that too, something that Does he need somebody who's going to go in there and hit and they're going to go and get a bit of confidence, or does he need somebody who's going to take him rounds? I think he's in a very, very interesting.
I think he
part of his
probably.
career now.
I think he needs someone who's going to take him rounds, because I said earlier that he hasn't lost any confidence in that power, and that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you don't want to, like as you said, you put it perfectly. Like, what happens when that doesn't work? You don't want to. I remember talking to Ross Amber about this, because he had David Lemieux, who just ironed everybody out early in his career and for really quite a long time. And Russ said he was always telling him, we need a plan B here, because this won't always work. And David Lemieux just didn't believe him, basically. And Russ described it as puncher's disease.
Yeah.
And it's a thing, and it's dangerous. So if you could put him in with someone who you suspect can take it, I'd be tempted to do that. I think probably.
We've got some shouts here. Dubois versus Wardley. I don't necessarily think that is realistic when you've got one.
It's not. It'd be great, but it's not realistic.
Not realistic at all. Dubois versus Jerry Forrest. Yeah. Dubois versus Kubrat Pulev.
Jerome Anderson's got Jerry Forrest next, doesn't he? I think.
Yes,
Jared Anderson. I mean,
yeah.
Jerome Anderson was a football agent.
He's on their card this weekend.
That's
Lopez
right.
and Sandor Martin, which we're going to actually come on to talk about this weekend's action before we wrap things up. We've got about half an hour left, just less. So if you've got any questions in the chat, make sure you hit the like button first, and then get the questions in. We've got 225 of you, and there are only 51 likes. Come on, Barry Jones is gone now. You can start hitting that like button. Josh Warrington returns in a tough fight, I think, this weekend against Luis Alberto Lopez, defending his IBF featherweight title mandatory defense. Yeah, I think Luis Alberto Lopez, we see sometimes your mandatory challengers are not always up to scratch. I think he very much is, and will pose a threat to Josh Warrington this weekend.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I like fighters with the kind of resume that Lopez has got, because he's picked up a couple of defeats, but they were a while ago now, 2018, 2019, and he's a good example of someone who really seized the day during COVID, because he boxed outside of Mexico before, but he got the call to go to the bubble, peak COVID, like July 2020 or thereabouts, to fight Andy Vences, who was a top-ranked fighter, but who lost a fight that he wasn't supposed to lose. And they were rehabilitating him, basically. And that's what Lopez was brought there for, but he won. Off the back of that, he got asked to box on another top-ranked bill, although it took a while to happen. And again, he was in the away corner, and he won easily against an undefeated fighter. And then he took care of Isaac Lowe in emphatic fashion. Those are 3 big wins on the road. 3 big wins. And I think he's won his last 9 or something like that. This year, he's just kind of ticked over and waited. A couple of fights that he was always going to win, and he has won. But Warrington's been down this road before. He's not going to underestimate anyone. I don't think he underestimated Maurizio Lara necessarily, but what happened on that night, it happened. And yeah, it is hard though. And people aren't really paying too much attention to Lopez, because most people don't know who he is. In the same way that most people just kind of assume that Sonny Edwards was definitely going to beat his guy the other week, Alvarado, and he did win, but he was a proper operator.
It's a real fight.
Yeah,
it's a real fight. You mentioned Luis Alberto Lopez, Venado Lopez is his nickname. It's always easier than the double barrel start, but he boxed Gabe Flores Jr.
That's it. That was the 20-0 fighter, yeah. And he beat him easily too.
He beat him up badly.
Yeah.
It was that. I mean, we spoke about corner work a lot, and earlier on with Don Charles and stuff. That was probably the worst corner work I think I've seen. We had Brad Jacobs from Top Rank up at the end, calling the fight off with about 15, 20 seconds to go. Gabe Flores Jr., trained by Gabe Flores Sr., who after the fight said that he left his son in there to teach him a lesson.
Oh, is that one,
wasn't it? Which
yes.
I'll never, ever forget. That's harrowing stuff.
It's terrible.
And then we saw Gabe Flores Jr. I think that fight basically ruined his career. He's not been the same since. He's since lost again. He was a talented fighter. I remember when we were over doing the Fury shows, when he boxed Tom Schwartz and he boxed Otto Wallin, Gabe Flores Jr. was kind of big push behind him. Young, good-looking kid, spoke well. And along came Bernardo Lopez, and he really put a real bad beating on him. I remember thinking that the 9th and 10th round of that fight was some of the most uncomfortable rounds of boxing I've ever seen, and made more uncomfortable by the fact that it's his own flesh and blood who left him in there.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, those are 2 massive away wins, aren't they? Because
huge.
I think he's I think he's signed with Top Rank now, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think off the back of that, they took him on, and rightly so. And the job he did on Isaac Lowe was, as I said, it was
resounding,
emphatic.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one for Warrington. It is, and he needs to get the finish to his career that he wants. And I think I'm a fan. Like, I love Josh. I think he's a great lad, and the way he's gone about things and the way he conducts himself, I just think he's top class. I would go as far as to say the finish to his career that he deserves. You can't really deal in that too much in boxing because
nobody gets what they deserve.
Yeah, pretty much. But he needs to get past this on Saturday. But it will be hard-earned, that win.
Yeah,
I don't have any doubt about that. Should he get it?
And my concern with Warrington is kind of what completely different fighters, but what Barry was saying about Chocolatito of being a pressure fighter against a puncher, somebody who can punch. And I don't think Luis Alberto Lopez is as big of a one-punch hitter as Mauricio Lara was, but they're both guys who are heavy-handed, punches from awkward angles. Lopez is not a conventional fighter at all. And that's my fear with Warrington. And when you've had a long, hard career and you've had hard fights along the way, admittedly winning the vast majority of them, awkward puncher is not really what you want to be coming up against at this stage of your career. When he's got those big fights on the horizon, the Lee Wood fight, it looks as though kind of the mechanisms behind the scenes are trying to make that fight. We've seen Lee Wood supposed to be boxing Mauricio Lara. There's been talks about him fighting this person, that person. But you would think that it makes the most sense to have Warrington versus Wood, 2 guys with big fan base over here. It'd be a good fight as well. I hope I'm wrong, but in the last couple of years, it would be quite fitting if Warrington was to lose this. With the way that everything has gone in his last couple of years, starting off with vacating the title, losing to Lara, the kind of the hard road back, getting his jaw broken by Kiko Martinez. And you mentioned there, and I kind of not even half jokingly said, people don't always get or very rarely get what they deserve in boxing. And you just hope that, of course, impartial, and the winner of the fight is the winner of the fight. But if he was to get beat here, it would be a difficult route back to a big fight. I think he could still do the Wood fight, but it would lose a lot of the luster. Would he still want to box it? I'm sure he's made some decent money. He's had I know from his perspective, he's had domestic fights where he's boxed Carl Framptons, Lee Selby's, and what have you. Would a fight with Lee Wood when you've lost your IBF title and you get beat at home, would that be something that he'd want to do? So, yeah, it's a hard fight. This is a proper banana skin for Josh Warrington, and there'll be people who haven't watched Bernardo Lopez box. Do watch him before the fight this weekend. The Vences fight, as Andy was mentioning, and the Gabe Flores Jr. fight in particular is one that stands in the memory for me. But a really hard night's work potentially for Josh Warrington, and if he loses, your Lee Woods, your Robeisio Ramirez, who I think could be the best featherweight in the world already, but has to prove it in the ring. I know I see a little smile on Andy Clark's face. Very good fighter. But yeah, it's a hard night, I think, this weekend for Josh Warrington, and one where, unfortunately for him, if he wins and he wins well, I don't think he'll necessarily get the appropriate credit.
No, maybe not. I think if I were to borrow an analogy from another sport, I would say that if we're Josh, a tennis player, for example, he's in a semi-final on Saturday, and he may well not have enough in him to get to go deep into another Grand Slam and get to another final. If he can beat Lopez, then he gets, he's in the final. He's in the final of Wimbledon in a big fight. I'm mixing my metaphors, but you understand what I'm saying, because it's been hard work the last 2.5 years, because COVID came at an absolutely terrible time for him, because things were all just starting to happen. He moved back to Matchroom. Things were starting to happen. He'd achieved a lot, but it looked like that trip to Vegas, all these big fights, they were there, weren't they? They were there. And then all of a sudden they weren't, and then he's losing to Mauricio Lara, and then in the rematch it was very unsatisfactory. Then he gets it done against Martinez, but it comes at a cost. And I think he probably hasn't got loads left, to be honest with you. I mean, he'll know how much, but if that is the case, then what he will still have, I think, on the weekend is that kind of one more time. Let's just fucking get this done, get over the line, and then I can have that maybe last really big fight, and then that'll be it.
I think he's going to need to. I think he's going to need. There's going to be a time.
Oh, he's going to need to really want it.
Yeah.
Because Lopez definitely will.
Yeah, there's going to be a time in the fight on Saturday night where he's going to really have to bite down on the gut shield. He's going to have. Look, he always has amazing support. The fact that England are playing as well is a nice little addition to the undercard. He's going to need that support. He's going to need everybody cheering him on because he's not fighting a Shakur Stevenson or somebody that everybody knows about and knows it's a hard fight. These are the ones where these are the banana skins where I think people in the know about Lopez, whereas the wider public, Warrington,
they'll see the couple of defeats and that's the thing is like, you know, and if Josh was watching this, he'd probably be bristling, thinking, how dare they question whether I still want it? Of course, I still want it, but with almost every fighter, particularly one who's operated at that level for so long, you hit a fight where you're deep in it and you're in the trenches, and actually you realise you don't quite want it as much as you used to, and it probably comes as a bigger shock to you than anyone. But that is what happens. You go to the well, and there's not anything left. And I mean, you know, I absolutely hope that there's buckets and buckets left there for him because. I want to see him go out with a bang.
I want to see that big Vegas away day.
Yeah, I do.
That's what I want for him. But with all due respect to Lee Wood, and that would be a huge fight over here. You got sort of Nottingham Forest and Leeds, and you got the football contingency, and they're both.
He's done a stadium though. You know, he had a stadium night.
That's got to be the one, isn't it? If it's Leo Santa Cruz or somebody else or Robesi Ramirez, I mean, whoever.
Yeah.
He's one of the few. I've tried to speak to our American counterparts about it. He's the closest we've had to a Ricky Hatton since Ricky Hatton. And he could still take a 5,000, or I don't know, every time you talk about Ricky Hatton, an extra 5,000 fans went over to Vegas, but he could take 5, 10, maybe 1,000 for the right fight at the right time of the year.
I think he could.
Over to Vegas. And you, again, boxing as a sport, I mean, this past weekend, I mean, what everyone's talking about is the packed stadium and the event and the showpiece, that's what you'd want to see for him, for somebody who started at the small halls, who gave everything they had, and they went around area level, English title, Commonwealth, British, European, world. It's that last thing that he hasn't ticked off. He's done Ellen Road with the Kaiser Chiefs and Lucas Radaby and everybody walking into the ring.
Exactly. Like you say, it's what that one last thing, and how many British fighters get to do that? You know, not very many. I mean, you look at someone like Frampton and those fights against Santa Cruz in New York and then in Las Vegas. You know, that is the stuff that dreams are absolutely made of, because not many people get to do that. And okay, in the context of Las Vegas boxing history, people might think, well, God, that's not as big as packing out Elland Road, but it is, because it's different. You know, you're breaking new ground. You're doing something that very few British fighters have managed to do. So I definitely think that's what he would want to do. But there's no chance of it happening if he doesn't win on Saturday.
Is the Vegas fight a myth, though? Lots of people talking about cost of living, pay-per-view prices, etc. Trips to Vegas are expensive, as are the beers. Yeah, I understand that, but this is kind of one of the unique things about Josh Warrington. If you've been on that journey for 10 years,
you're going to want to finish it.
You're going to find a way to make it happen. But yeah, I mean, that's the one that's missing. Over here, look, not even just over here, just in general. Okay, you've got the sold out stadiums and the arenas and stuff like that. Very, very few have both, with the sold out stadiums at home and then the big Vegas away trip. Okay, Fury's now done it, but he's actually done it the other way around. Did the Vegas first and then the sold out over here. Hatton did it. Khan did it. We didn't really.
Didn't really.
Here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like stadium.
No, bigger TV star than Gate, unlike Warrington. So That would be nice. Right, we've got about 15 minutes or so left. Terence Crawford's fighting this weekend, Andy. He's not fighting Errol Spence. Sorry, not our fault. But he is fighting David Avanesyan. Again, much to the ire of my American brethren, I've said that this is a good fight. I think it's a good fight, one that Terence Crawford is rightfully a significant favourite in. But I'm expecting David Avanesyan to make him work for it this weekend. How about you?
Yeah, I think he'll do better than American observers necessarily think he will. They can tend to overlook Europeans, quite readily at times. And David's an Armenian now boxing out of the UK. Very interesting backstory, and has never really put a foot wrong. I mean, he's lost some fights, but so what? He's mixed in some really good company, and I don't think he'll be intimidated or overawed by it by any stretch. Crawford's absolutely supersonic. I mean, I don't know what else to say about him, really. It's just... And he's getting well paid for this fight, so the fact that he's promotionally, I don't even really know where he is in that regard. Or what he would necessarily do after this, but I just enjoy seeing him every time I do see him.
I think he's a free agent boxing on BLK Prime,
yeah,
or whether that's the promotional company.
I've not really looked into them or what that's all about, to be honest.
Seems like a bit of a strange vibe, but it's boxing. This is we open our doors and here we are. But yeah, no, I completely agree. Look, I think Terence Crawford is a resounding favourite against anybody at welterweight, not named Errol Spence. Arguably, I know people want to talk about Virgil Ortiz and Boots Ennis, brilliant fighters of kind of tomorrow, but still kind of in the here and now, Crawford Spence is the one that everybody's wanted, or Spence Crawford, however you want to look at it. But I think this is a good fight, and I think that had Crawford already boxed Spence, or had Spence not existed, we look at this fight and I think it would have been a good fight. Okay, Americans people will say that he lost to Kavaliauskas, lost to Lamont Peterson. Okay, there's your barometer. But fighters develop and change over time. Crawford,
they're good fighters too.
Exactly. Yeah. And Kavaliauskas had Crawford hurt in their fight. He had Virgil Ortiz hurt. He can really punch.
Yeah,
Peterson
that's
again.
it. You look at exactly. I think that's that. You can't look at defeats against guys like that and think that makes you some kind of substandard interloper. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. My concern of Avanesyan is, and I guess this is the kind of the double-edged sword to that, is the level of opponents since. And he's looked great. He stopped Kerman Leharaga twice on enemy territory on away soil. He, of course, had the win over the man that we were talking about earlier on, Josh Kelly. But then he's had up here, actually. We've got Liam Taylor, Oskari Metz, 1-round blowout, 2-round blowout. Jose Del Rio, 1-round blowout. It's not the ideal preparation for somebody like Terence Crawford. But having said that, he can punch. He's experienced. If Crawford is, not 100% on his game and he's thinking about Spence and he's thinking about this, you never know. But I think it's fair to say Terence Crawford is a sizable favourite. Yeah, he's a massive favourite, and correctly. And it's always possible that when you step up against somebody as good as him, that you'll just find it to be like nothing else you've ever experienced before in your life, and it's just way too much. If he's really on point and he cuts you down, that could happen. And our some of our American counterparts would be eyeing us smugly across the Atlantic, telling us that they told us so. But that it can happen, can't it? It could happen because he's that good that he can do it to pretty much anybody, bar a handful of people.
And he has got that type of style as well, where you look at Avanesyan, and Avanesyan's a pressure fighter. He's clearly heavy-handed, but he leaves a lot of gaps. And if you're Terence Crawford, he's a brilliantly offensive fighter. Like he puts his shots together from southpaw, orthodox, whatever you want it. He's fast hands. He can punch. So it could go the way that I'm gonna keep saying it. Our American counterparts say it's gonna go. I've sort of said, look, I think it'll be a decent fight. If it's wrong, I'm happy to apologise and I'm happy to say that I got it wrong. But of course, we all want to see Spence Crawford, but unfortunately, we don't. We don't have that fight next. Okay, we've got a short period of time to talk about another fight that's happening this weekend. Kind of briefly touched upon it earlier. Teofimo Lopez returns. Sandor Martin. I really like that fight, and I think going back, if you go back a few years and you think about the Sandor Martin who lost to Anthony Yigit and you think about the Teofimo Lopez who beat Vasily Lomachenko, and okay, they're
Didn't
different.
imagine this happening, did you?
No, and also I didn't imagine this happening and thinking Sandor Martin could win that fight, and I do think that he could win that fight. I think Lopez is a favourite, but Martin has got that style. It's awkward, it's negative, it's horrible, and Lopez has shown in the past, the temperament is not always there. Against Lomachenko, he was brilliant. His game plan was on point. He held the middle of the ring. He kind of had that arrogance of youth, that kind of chest out, I'm here, this is my time, I'm going to show you. And then against Kambosos, it went horribly wrong. And then the fight where he came back, he didn't quite look like that same presence. Okay, up at 140 pounds now, so he's not going to be the same physical specimen he was at 135. But I think it's very, very important for Lopez to start the fight well. If he doesn't, and Martin is allowed to get into that rhythm on the back foot and just nicking shots here and there and frustrating him, I think it could be a hard night's work for Lopez.
Yeah, I agree with that. It could turn into one, definitely. Do we have any idea of where Lopez is in terms of his kind of headspace these days? Because that's something that we've never really known.
No, I mean, I read and it was after the Kambosos fight. I can't remember who it was. It was on Boxing Scene. Do find the article if you can, where it documents Lopez's behaviour throughout fight week.
I think I've read that.
And he was. They talk about the rules meeting where he said, I think words, I'm paraphrasing here, but his words to the effect of, I'm glad that when I'm in the ring that there's a referee, because when I knock my opponents down, I want to stamp on them, I want to jump on them, and I just don't, I'm glad the referee's there to stop me killing them. And you're thinking, okay. Yeah. And then I think he left the rules meeting, and he says, fuck the government or something like that, something quite bizarre.
I heard
and then we had all of the kind of the fight itself, and then the fight afterwards where he did his backflip because he thought he won, and he started shouting into the microphone, and then we saw all of the kind of the issues, and I know he's had some issues with his training setup, was of course his father and his wife, and I know there's some behind the scenes family problems there. But that is it, I think. That is the $1 million question when it comes to Teofimo Lopez. He's incredibly talented. He can punch hard. He's got good shot selection. When he's on, he's fantastic. But I even felt in his comeback fight at 140, some fighters will do after they lose a fight, and particularly when he was kind of on the way up and he'd just beaten Lomachenko, and he was going to be, do 2 million pay-per-views against Kambosos, and he was going to do this, he was going to do that, and it all went horribly wrong for him. And you just wonder how that impacts on somebody. I know he's saying that he's, it's the take back and it's this and it's that, but what else is he going to say? He's not going to be completely open with everything. Whereas this is a hard fight stylistically to look good in. I don't, short of him catching Martin with a shot early in the fight and putting him away, I feel like there's going to be times in this fight where he's going to need to have a good temperament. Otherwise he's going to lose rounds at least.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, because I think, with fighters generally, but it would appear to be the case, particularly with him, that if that's not right, then I don't think we're ever going to see the best of him. I don't think there just seemed to be a lot of chaos around him, and it permeates with him. With some fighters, they can be surrounded by utter mayhem, but when the bell goes, that's kind of their safe place. And that's where they get away from it, and that's where they can focus their mind, their thoughts. Not always, but most of the time. You look at some of the greats have been like that. Duran, your pal who you spent a lot of time with in Acapulco. Tyson in the early days. There's loads of examples of that. I don't think he's one. I think it gets to him, all of that stuff. I don't think he can necessarily shut it all out. And we don't know the ins and the outs of it, but when you, like you said, you're on that roller coaster ride and everything has been an ascent at that point, and then you have a dip, which obviously he did, then you can start to wonder what people's intentions are and whether the people around you really want what's best for you. All sorts of horrendous thoughts can enter your mind. And for me, that's really the key, because he's got loads of ability, but it could be difficult the weekend because of the opponent. And I don't know whether choosing him as an opponent is a good or a bad thing. Sometimes I was thinking about it on the way in, and I thought you could look at it and just think perfect, because he's going to have to show some discipline, some patience. He's going to have to show us that he's got it sorted up here. And then another way, I just thought, oh God, like this could be a terrible choice.
You want someone to stand in front of you.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not really sure, but would that give you any real answers? Hard to say. It's. I really hope that he, you know, that it is the take back and he gets. I say back to where he was. That's in terms of like belts and stuff. That'll be tricky, but at the same time, he's still really young, isn't he?
Well, he had that brilliant breakout fight. I mean, even before the Lomachenko fight, knocked out Richard Comey in a couple of rounds.
I was convinced after that. Before that, I didn't really like him much before that. I thought some of the things he did in the ring left a bit to be desired. You know, I'm quite old school with stuff like that. But after that, I just thought, because I quite fancy Comey in that fight. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, yeah, fair enough.
And then he had the brilliant performance against Lomachenko where he was so disciplined in that fight.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
And you kind of felt like it was the emergence of something.
Yeah.
And that little period of sort of 6 weeks to 8 weeks or so after that fight, where he was brilliant with the media.
Yeah.
It was kind of this, he was ushering in the four kings, wasn't it? It was him, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, they're still not bloody boxed. Then he boxed each other, rather.
He came and sat down with us on TalkSport when we were over for Fury Wilder 3. And he just seemed really, really zen. You know, I was really impressed with him. Like, he just seemed very, very... There seemed to be a lot of clarity there, a lot of focus there. He seemed kind of like... He seemed like an old head on young shoulders. And then he kind of... His head fell off. And it happens to loads of people. It's not even really a criticism. Because, you know... You can't walk in another man's shoes and all of that, but yeah, he's an interesting case, isn't he? Definitely,
he very much is. Yeah, I think I did quite a good sit down with him, quite a long sit down with him.
He's a great talker.
Really good, really good. Before the Fury-Schwartz fight, this was start of June 2019, and at the time I thought, okay, yeah, you know, he's got a good head on his shoulders, good talent, and sees things well and kind of understands his place within everything. But, you know, I always had this feeling with him, even before the Kambosos fight, where I kind of felt like he was going to be like a Fernando Vargas, where he's in big fights, like exciting fights, and he's kind of done when he's 28, 29.
Yeah.
And that's the impression I got before he lost. And I don't know whether or not that will be the case, but it's been a very, very tumultuous period of his career. And when you think about it being so early in his career, shifting back and getting back on track is going to be difficult, and against a difficult opponent. Right, we've got to wrap this up. So before we do that, how do you see that fight going, Andy? What's your prediction for Josh Warrington versus Luis Alberto Lopez, and your prediction? All right, all three. I keep forgetting. There's bloody so much boxing on. I need a break. Anyway, Warrington Lopez, Crawford Avanesyan, Lopez Martin.
So Warrington, I'll say that he'll dog it out and he'll get it done. It'll be hard, but he'll get it done, and he'll win it on points. I think Crawford will stop Avanesyan. That doesn't, for me, preclude a perfectly respectable performance by Avanesyan, but I think he will. Late-ish, 9 or 10. And Lopez, I think, will beat Martin. Scrappy. On the cards, he'll get it quite wide, maybe a bit wider than he should, but there won't be. But it'll be, you know, it'll be fair enough that he wins.
Okay, interesting. I would go for the same. I feel there's a bit of controversy in the Lopez Martin.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think it's going to be very.
I think
close.
it will be wider than it should be, but maybe you're going a little bit tighter.
I'm going a little bit tighter.
He'll get it, but maybe he's, you know, he needed a bit of a rub of the green.
Start of that fight's going to be so interesting. But anyway, thank you as always to everybody who's joined us here on the live stream, even to the little shit Barry Jones who didn't make it until the end. I'm sorry for him as much as I am for everybody else. But thanks as always for tuning into the ID Boxing Review Show, live show, whatever you want to call it. From me, Rob Tebbutt, from television broadcast specialist Andy Clarke, and radio, available for radio. Thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you next time. There we go.